He doesn't know it yet, but if I make the next move carefully, he'll lose everything. My name is Noah. I'm 40, and I work remotely as a software engineer in Tacoma, Washington. That message was never meant for my eyes. But while syncing photos and school calendars on our shared tablet one morning, something unexpected happened. A full backup pulled in every message from her phone, text that loaded before I realized what I was seeing. I froze in my home office, coffee cooling beside me, scrolling through a private chat my wife Lena had with someone named Patricia Hoffman. At first, the name meant nothing, but her words made my chest tighten. She spoke like I was already out of the picture, an obstacle she was planning to eliminate. For the last 3 years, I handled the school run while Lena slept in. I prepped dinners most nights because she said cooking gave her anxiety. When Maya got pneumonia last winter, I stayed up checking her breathing. Lena, meanwhile, grumbled about missing her book club. When Jacob needed help with his volcano model, I was slicing cardboard at midnight. I thought we were building a life together. I thought the long nights I spent debugging code to pay for her yoga retreats and weekend getaways mattered. When she said she needed time to rediscover herself, I gave it to her. When she said my work hours were too rigid, I restructured my entire routine. But as I scrolled through weeks of messages I was never meant to see, it became clear she wasn't trying to save our marriage. She was setting me up. She'd written, "Mental instability plays well in custody hearings." I closed the tablet, got up, and made breakfast for the kids like it was any other Tuesday. Packed lunches, dropped them at school. Maya talked excitedly about her spelling bee. Jacob showed off a soccer bruise. Everything looked normal, but nothing was. That evening over dinner, I watched Lena laugh at something on her phone while the kids recapped their day. But I didn't see my wife, I saw someone else. Someone studying me, calculating how to dismantle the life I built. She kissed my cheek as I cleared the plates, asked about my day, while her thumbs typed quietly below the table. She smiled when I reminded her about Maya's parent-teacher meeting. I once believed marriage was about teamwork, but for Lena, it had become a chessboard, and I hadn't even known I was a piece. We met 8 years ago at a Seattle cafe. She was reading Hemingway, criticizing men who didn't understand the writing. Maybe I should have noticed the sarcasm, but she was striking, confident, magnetic. She seemed impressed when I mentioned I'd read the same novel in college. 6 months later, we moved in. Within a year, we were engaged. She left her marketing job after Maya's birth, said she wanted to be a full-time mom, and I supported her completely. I picked up extra projects, stayed up late working, made sure she never had to worry about finances. Looking back, I see the changes were gradual. She stopped asking about my work, rolled her eyes when I shared anything exciting. After Jacob was born, things got colder. "You're always working," she'd say, though when I cut back hours, she'd say we were broke. When I gently suggested she take on some part-time work, she accused me of devaluing her as a mother. It was a moving target. She wanted me present, but not too involved. Supportive, but never directive. Driven, but never absent. I spent years decoding her moods, shifting myself to meet constantly changing expectations. Then came the new circle, women from yoga who bragged about draining their exes in court. They joked about winning custody, houses, and alimony. Lena laughed along. Too often, she began asking specific questions about our assets, whose name was on how custody worked in Washington state. Last month, she pushed for marriage counseling. Dr. Elizabeth Reed. I went along, hoping it meant she still cared. I thought it was a step forward, but something felt off. Lena would retell events in ways I barely recognized, twisting our arguments into narratives that painted me as domineering. In one session, she told Dr. Reed I had anger issues. I sat in disbelief. I don't even raise my voice. He gets weird about money, always accusing me of overspending, she claimed. I calmly explained that I've always handled our bills because she said it overwhelms her. "See," she interrupted. "He's doing it again, trying to make me look bad." That night, she was unusually affectionate. Apologized. Blamed stress. I believed her like always. Then came her request to record our conversations for therapy homework. I agreed. I shouldn't have. Over the next 2 weeks, her plan unfolded. More messages surfaced. Patricia Hoffman wasn't just a friend. She was a divorce attorney who specialized in high-conflict custody battles. Document everything, she told Lena. Anytime he sounds angry, paranoid, controlling, build a pattern. The counseling wasn't for healing. It was a trap. Dr. Reed wasn't mediating. She was witnessing. Lena was provoking me on purpose. And worse, she was planning a financial ambush. Moving funds into separate accounts. Writing false claims about me hiding money, even though I'd always been fully transparent. She even plotted to have her sister testify that I was unwell, unstable, unfit, and all the while I was making breakfast, attending spelling bees, cutting cardboard volcanoes, thinking we were still a team. Despite Rebecca barely knowing me, Lena had already coached her on what to say. Alleged controlling behavior, instability, the script was clear. The recording idea is perfect, Patricia had texted. If you can get him to lose it on tape, we'll have everything. Suddenly, everything made sense. The therapy push. The phone casually placed between us during serious talks. The way she started poking at vulnerable topics, the moment her screen was facing up and recording. I considered confronting her right then, marching into the kitchen and laying the evidence on the table, asking her outright what she was doing. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the way her divorced friends always described their exes. Unhinged, paranoid, aggressive. And how the courts had apparently believed them without a second thought. Instead, I stayed at my desk and did what I do best. I researched. Washington was a single-party consent state. I could legally record any conversation I was part of. Our security system? Upgradable. Phone calls? Documented. I had been fighting blind. Now I knew the rules. That night, Lena tried again. She brought up a late client payment, accused me of hiding income. Her phone was on the counter, screen lit, mic open. "You're right," I said calmly. "I should have told you sooner. Let me pull up the invoice." I opened my laptop and walked her through every detail. Patient, transparent. She looked annoyed. "Are you okay?" she asked after 20 minutes of failed bait. "You seem off." "Just tired," I said. "Too much code today." But I wasn't tired. I was wide awake. For the first time in months. If she wanted a game of documentation, she'd forgotten who I was. I'd spent 8 years building systems that track everything. She thought she was hunting me. She didn't realize I was already 3 steps ahead. My mistake was thinking we could still fix things face to face. 3 weeks after reading those messages, I decided to try something different. What if I reminded her of what we once had? I planned a weekend away, just us. No kids. No stress. Ocean views, the same restaurant we went to for our first anniversary. Everything she used to love. At first, it felt like it might work. She laughed again, held my hand. We walked the beach Friday night, talked about Maya learning to walk. She even brought up a summer vacation. Then came Saturday morning. She angled her phone between our coffee cups. "I've been thinking about us," she said. "Do you think we're actually compatible?" I should have known. It was a setup. A loaded question designed to make me defensive. "I think we've hit a tough patch," I answered honestly. "But we have 2 amazing kids. 8 years of history. That's worth something. But what if one of us has changed? What if we want different things now?" "Then we talk it out," I said. "Like adults. Like partners." She kept pushing. "Why didn't take the bait?" She switched gears. "Sometimes I feel like you don't see me anymore," she said. "Like I'm just here to take care of the house while you bury yourself in work." It stung, because in some ways she was right. I had picked up more hours to keep her comfortable. But I explained it wasn't neglect. It was support. And still, she twisted it. "See," she snapped. "It's always about money with you." The conversation dragged for an hour. Every answer I gave, she spun into something darker. Every effort to understand her was tossed aside. It wasn't about connection. It was about catching me slipping, recording frustration, cornering me into saying something I couldn't undo. I didn't. But by Sunday, as we drove home, she was texting constantly. No doubt updating Patricia. Her version of events would paint me as distant, obsessed with control, emotionally unavailable. And then came Monday. She said she'd scheduled an appointment with a new counselor, Dr. Michael Stevens. specialist in high-conflict marriages. Already filled him in, she said. Told him about your temper. She said it while making Maya's sandwich like it was nothing. How you shut down when I try to talk, she added. I had never yelled, never stormed out. But in her narrative, calmness was coldness. Boundaries were controlling. Discussions were manipulation. The session was set for Friday. She insisted I go, said it was important for us. What she didn't mention was that Dr. Stevens was known for keeping detailed case notes. Notes that courts could request in custody battles. All week, her tactics escalated. She criticized my parenting loudly in front of the kids, bought expensive things, then accused me of controlling her when I asked why. Started fights before bed, then claimed I was stressing her out. Her phone was always nearby, always recording, and I stayed steady, which only made her angrier. By Thursday night, I understood. Every step I took to save our marriage was ammunition for her to use later. Every productive session, every honest conversation, every compromise, evidence. She didn't want to heal anything. She wanted to bury me beneath her story. And I, unknowingly, was helping her write it. Friday came. The appointment with Dr. Stevens. And Lena? She looked satisfied as we got into the car, smiling, making small talk, like we were just another couple trying to work things out. She had no idea that for the past 3 weeks, I'd been recording every single conversation. Or that I'd already sat down with an attorney to discuss custody laws in Washington. The rules of the game had just changed completely. From the moment we stepped into Dr. Stevens' office, it felt like a setup. The seating placement wasn't random. Lena sat close to him, while I was tucked away further like an outsider. He already seemed briefed on our dynamic, because instead of listening to what I said, he zeroed in on my posture, tone, and expressions. Noah, Lena mentioned you've had trouble managing stress lately, he began. How would you describe your emotional state these days? It was a trap. If I said I was fine, I was avoiding the truth. If I admitted to stress, I was proving I was unstable. I chose the middle ground. I'm worried about our marriage, I said. Some days are harder than others, but I want to work through our issues. What worries you most? Dr. Stevens asked, pen already moving. I glanced at Lena. She smiled, encouraging me. Another trap. Communication, I said slowly. It feels like we're having different conversations about the same issue. Before I could elaborate, Lena jumped in. He gets paranoid about money, she said. Last week, he accused me of hiding purchases. I hadn't accused her of anything. I had asked about an unfamiliar charge, but saying that out loud would only make me sound defensive. I noticed a charge I didn't recognize. I said, careful with my words. I was just trying to understand our spending. See? Lena turned to Dr. Stevens. He says it's understanding, but it feels like interrogation. And that was how the session went for 50 minutes. Every concern I voiced was twisted into control. Every question I asked became an attack. Dr. Stevens nodded occasionally, but his questions always circled back to Lena's story. As we walked out, Lena scheduled the next session with a satisfied grin. That night, I made a decision. I called the attorney I'd been quietly speaking to, Thomas Fletcher, a specialist in father's rights. This time, I was ready to tell him everything. Bring all the recordings, Thomas said, and the texts. We need to establish the full picture before she does. The next morning, while Lena was out at yoga, I drove to his office. He sat and listened to hours of footage. Conversations where Lena tried to provoke me. Therapy sessions twisted into evidence. Phone calls where she coached her sister on what to say. This is something, Thomas said, eyes narrowing. I've seen manipulative tactics before, but this is strategic. It's been building for months. He laid it out clearly. This was classic. Use counseling to log a pattern of instability. Get recordings to showcase anger. Prep witnesses to back it all up. Then file for sole custody and claim emotional danger. The good news, he said, is you've got everything. The texts with Patricia Hoffman, the recordings, the setup attempts. A judge will see right through this. But there was also bad news. They were moving faster than expected. Thomas had learned that Patricia Hoffman was preparing court documents. They planned to file in under 2 weeks. They were rushing afraid I might catch on. We need to move first, Thomas advised. File for divorce ourselves. Request an immediate custody evaluation. Force them to defend against the truth instead of spinning their story first. I thought of Maya and Jacob. How much this would confuse them. How Lena's plan would hurt them the most. Do it, I said. File tomorrow. That evening, I tucked my kids in like always. Read Jacob his dragon book. Help Maya review her spelling list. Ordinary Tuesday night things. Except tomorrow, nothing would be ordinary. And Lena had no idea. Thomas filed the divorce petition at 9 a.m. sharp. By 10, we'd submitted a motion for emergency custody evaluation. By 11, Patricia Hoffman was on the phone, demanding to know what we were doing. Lena found out at 3 p.m. The doorbell rang. A few muffled words, then silence. 10 minutes later, she stormed into my office, legal envelope in hand. Her face was pale. "What is this?" she snapped. I looked up from my laptop calmly. "Divorce papers," I said. "I figured you'd recognize them. You've been preparing yours for months." She stood frozen, mouth half open. This wasn't part of her script. She was supposed to file first, to frame me as unstable, to control the story. "I don't understand," she said. "We've been working on our marriage." "You mean the counseling?" I asked. "The sessions where you rewrote our history? Will you try to make me sound controlling and paranoid?" I kept my voice steady. "I know about Patricia Hoffman, Lena. I know everything." The color drained from her face. "I don't know what you're talking about." I turned my laptop screen toward her. Hit play. Her voice filled the room, but it was Rebecca's voice that came first. "Just say he yells when you spend money. Make it sound scary." Lena replied, "Perfect. And say he ignores the kids when he's working." I hit pause. "I have 4 hours of this. Your texts with Patricia, your coaching sessions. It's all documented." She tried to pivot, pull the emotional manipulation card. "You recorded me? In our own home? That's insane, Noah. This is exactly what I've been telling people about you." I didn't flinch. "Washington's a single-party consent state," I said. "Recording is legal. Conspiring to frame someone in court? That's another story entirely." That one word, asterisk, asterisk, perjury, asterisk, asterisk, stopped her cold. Clearly, Patricia hadn't explained just how serious their little scheme was under the law. "You're sick," Lena said finally, her voice trembling. "Recording your own wife? What kind of man does that?" "The kind who realized his wife was plotting to ruin him," I said. She left without another word. I could hear her on the phone seconds later, probably scrambling to do damage control with Patricia. But this time, there would be no spinning the situation. Thomas had already filed motions to have all evidence collected through Lena's manipulation dismissed. The therapy notes from Dr. Stevens would be disqualified. Her list of coached witnesses? Discredited. The custody evaluation was scheduled for the following week. Only now, I wasn't defending myself against accusations. I was presenting proof of calculated betrayal. That night, the kids noticed something was off. Maya asked if Mommy was sick. She'd seen Lena crying. Jacob wanted to know why I seemed so serious lately. I helped them with homework like usual. Made dinner while Lena remained in the bedroom, no doubt revising her next move with her attorney. When she finally emerged, her expression had changed. The confident woman who had been orchestrating this mess for months now looked like someone who had realized the rules had changed, and she was losing. "We need to talk," she said. "We can talk through our lawyers," I replied. "Noah, please. This doesn't have to destroy our family." I stared at her, at the woman I once built a life with, raised children with, trusted. "You already destroyed it," I said quietly. "I'm just making sure the wreckage is documented." The custody hearing lasted just over 3 hours. Patricia Hoffman came prepared with her usual routine. She painted me as some erratic, work-obsessed man who controlled his wife financially. She had Dr. Stevens ready to testify about my so-called anger issues. I supposedly got defensive during therapy. Then Thomas stood and played the recordings. Lena coaching Rebecca on what to say in court. Her chats with Patricia about painting me as unstable. Even a clip of her practicing crying on cue. Judge Morrison stopped the hearing after the second audio clip. "Counselor," she said to Patricia, Are you aware your client has been attempting to deceive this court? Patricia looked visibly shaken. She clearly hadn't known about the recordings either. Your Honor, we were unaware of these alleged files. Alleged, Judge Morrison said, and hit play on another clip. This time Lena's voice could be heard clearly, planning exactly how to lie in court. This sounds very much like a deliberate intent to mislead the family court, the judge said. Thomas methodically presented every piece of evidence. For months of text messages, recordings of provocation attempts, screenshots of Lena siphoning money into separate accounts while accusing me of financial control. Lena didn't speak. She couldn't. Everything she had plotted was unraveling in front of her. Dr. Stevens, who had been confident just minutes before, quietly requested to be excused. Patricia Hoffman tried to regroup, argued that even in difficult marriages, custody concerns can still be valid. But Judge Morrison had made up her mind. This court does not condone the weaponization of our legal system, she said. Moving on to the next story. He's such a boring loser. I deserve so much better. My name is Williams Ridley. I'm 53 years old, and I coordinate freight shipments for Driftline Construction out of Des Moines. I fix problems. I make sure things get where they need to go when they need to be there. 27 years married to Sandra, and she just said that about me in front of 40 people at our daughter's graduation dinner. The words hung in the air like smoke. Nobody moved. My sister Beth stopped cutting her chicken. My brother-in-law Dennis put down his beer bottle so slowly I could hear the glass touch the table. Lena, my 22-year-old daughter, the whole reason we were celebrating, looked like someone had slapped her. But I knew this was coming. Not the public announcement, not the theatrics, but the leaving part. I'd seen the signs for months. Sandra had been different since she started working with that trainer Troy. Late nights at the gym, new clothes, new attitude. She started talking about finding herself and living authentically. When your wife of 27 years starts using phrases like that, you know trouble's brewing. The strange part was how calm I felt. Like I've been holding my breath for months and finally exhaled. Sandra kept talking, gesturing toward the bar where Troy waited like some kind of rescue boat. She was explaining to everyone how she'd outgrown me, how she needed someone who understood her potential. I reached into my jacket pocket. Williams, Lena whispered. Dad, what? I pulled out a small white envelope. Not fancy, just business-sized paper with Sandra's name written across the front in my handwriting. For you, I said, and handed it to her. Sandra stopped mid-sentence. She looked at the envelope like it might bite her. The restaurant had gone completely quiet. Even the busboys had stopped clearing tables. What is this? She asked. Open it. She did, right there in front of God and everybody. I watched her face change. First confusion, then understanding, then something that looked like panic. Williams, she said, her voice different now. Smaller. What did you read out loud? I said. Since we're sharing everything with everyone tonight. Her hands started shaking. That's when I knew she understood exactly what she was holding and what it meant for the show she just put on. I should probably explain how we got here. Sandra and I met in college. She was studying communications. I was in logistics management. She was bright, ambitious, full of plans. I was the steady guy who showed up when he said he would. We balanced each other out, or so I thought. After we married, I took a job with Driftline Construction. Good company, steady work, solid benefits. Sandra worked part-time at various places, a marketing firm, then a nonprofit. Then she tried real estate for a while. Nothing stuck. She always said she was between opportunities, searching for something meaningful. When Lena was born, Sandra stayed home. I worked overtime to cover the difference. 50-hour weeks became 60. 60 became 70 during busy seasons. I missed some school plays, some parent conferences. Sandra handled those things. I handled the mortgage, the car payments, the college fund. For 20 years, this worked. Then Lena went to college and Sandra got restless. She joined a gym. Started talking about personal growth and life coaching. Met Troy, who was apparently more than willing to help her discover her authentic self. The warning signs weren't subtle. Late nights at the gym. New workout clothes that cost more than my work boots. phone calls she took in the other room. When I'd ask about her day, she'd get defensive. You wouldn't understand, she'd say. You're not exactly evolving. 6 months ago, I found a receipt for a hotel room in Cedar Rapids. When I asked about it, Sandra said she'd gone to a wellness seminar. Alone. For 2 days. On a weekend when I thought she was visiting her mother. That's when I called my lawyer friend Dennis Peterson. We'd coached Little League together years back. Good man. Honest. I asked him a hypothetical question about post-nuptial agreements and asset protection. Just curious, I said. Dennis wasn't fooled. Williams, you need to be careful here. If you're thinking what I think you're thinking, timing matters. I started paying attention. Real attention. Not just to what Sandra was saying, but to what she wasn't saying. How she looked at me. How she talked about our future. Or rather, how she stopped talking about our future altogether. 3 months ago, she mentioned Troy for the first time. My trainer thinks I should consider a career change, she said over dinner. He thinks I have untapped potential. That night, I couldn't sleep. I went to my office and started moving money. Quietly, carefully, within legal limits, into accounts Sandra didn't know about. Into trust that protected what I'd spent 27 years building. Because when your wife starts taking relationship advice from her personal trainer, you'd better start protecting yourself. The breaking point came 2 weeks before graduation. I walked into our house after work and found Sandra on the phone. She was laughing in a way I hadn't heard in years. Light. Young. When she saw me, the laughter stopped. I have to go, she said into the phone. Yeah, I will. Tomorrow. She hung up and busied herself with dishes that were already clean. Who was that? I asked. Just my trainer, Troy. He was telling me about this nutrition plan. Williams knew right then it had nothing to do with nutrition. That night, there was no more pretending. Sandra was in the bathroom brushing her teeth, and he sat on their bed. The same bed they had shared for nearly 3 decades, scanning the room. Her closet was half empty. When did that happen? He wandered over to her dresser and spotted a paper peeking out beneath her jewelry box. He hesitated but pulled it out. It was a printed email confirmation. A resort in Colorado. 2 guests. Check-in just days after Lena's graduation. Her name. Troy's name. They'd planned it all before even telling him. Williams didn't get angry. Not then. He just sat quietly, feeling a deep, hollow sadness. Sad for what they'd shared. Sad for what would never be again. Sad that she chose to make a spectacle of their breakup instead of just speaking the truth earlier. But more than anything, he felt clear, for the first time in months. That night, he printed 3 documents. Their 5-year-old post-nuptial agreement, bank records showing transfers to a trust, and notices revoking her access to joint accounts starting the day after graduation. He placed them carefully into a plain envelope and returned to bed. Sandra was already asleep or pretending. He listened to her breathing and realized how light he felt. The next morning, Sandra buzzed with excitement about graduation. She talked about the dinner, the guests, the new dress she bought. She was playing her part, the proud mom, loving wife. Williams watched, quietly amused, as she rehearsed her lines. This is such a special day, she beamed. I want it to be perfect. It will be, he replied. And it would. She had no idea just how perfect. He slipped the envelope into his jacket and headed to work. Another day at Driftline Construction, solving problems and delivering on time. That night at the restaurant, everything unfolded exactly as expected. Sandra erupted before she even finished reading the first page. You bastard. Her voice cut across the room like a siren. Heads turned. Glasses paused midair. A couple at the corner table froze. Is there a problem? The manager asked, appearing at Sandra's side. Yes, there's a problem, she snapped, waving the papers. My husband just... She stopped herself, realizing the audience. Please, Williams said gently. You're making a scene. I'm making a scene. Her laugh rang out sharp. You planned this. You knew I was going to... She stopped again. The silence begged for a confession. But to admit it meant owning the ambush she'd staged. Her face flushed. This isn't legal, she hissed. You can't move our money. I didn't, Williams said calmly. I moved mine. Legally. Per the post-nup you signed when we refinanced the house. Dennis, his brother-in-law, shifted uncomfortably. Sandra, maybe you should don't, she barked. Don't you take his side. I'm not, Dennis said. Just, maybe this isn't the time or place. But it was far too late for that. Sandra stood, still gripping the documents, and looked toward the bar. Troy tried to shrink into the shadows, but everyone saw him. Tell them, she ordered. Tell them what we talked about. Troy froze. He clearly hadn't signed up for this. Not like this. Not public. Not messy. Tell them how you make me feel alive. How much better you are than him. The entire restaurant had gone silent. Even the clatter from the kitchen had stopped. Troy hesitated, then walked slowly to her side. Babe, he said, awkwardly resting a hand on her shoulder. Let's just go. We don't need this. That was William's confirmation. They had planned this moment, rehearsed it, counted on his silence. But they hadn't planned on the envelope. Go ahead, William said. Leave. But Sandra read page 3 first. She flipped to the last page. Her hands trembled. The house, she whispered, is in Lena's name, Williams replied. As of yesterday. So is the cabin, and the boat, and most of the savings. All done legally. Just good planning. Sandra stammered. You can't do this. I already did, he said. Lena finally spoke. Dad, what's going on? Williams looked over and met his daughter's eyes. And my daughter, smart, kind, nothing like the mess her mother was making. I said, your mother has decided to start a new life. I'm just making sure she gets to do that without destroying yours in the process. Sandra sat down hard, still staring at the papers. The fire was gone from her face. Reality had landed. She finally saw that while she was busy plotting her dramatic exit, I had quietly prepared her landing. When? She asked. Her voice had shrunk. When did you know? I could have lied, made it easier. But Lena deserved the truth. And Sandra didn't deserve the soft version anymore. The hotel receipt, I said. Cedar Rapids. 6 months ago. Sandra's mother, Joyce, finally spoke. What hotel receipt? Sandra threw me a glare sharp enough to draw blood. She hadn't planned to tell her mother about Troy. That came later, after the divorce. Once she'd rewritten the story. Once she'd painted me as the reason it all fell apart. She said she went to a wellness seminar. I explained. But Troy was the main attraction. Sandra, Joyce said, her voice hard. What is he talking about? It's not what you think, Mom. It's exactly what she thinks, I said. 6 months of secrets. 6 months of plotting to turn our daughter's graduation into your personal soap opera. Troy shifted in his seat. Their narrative, Sandra the victim, me the villain, was crumbling. That script didn't include hotel bills or lying to your mother. I want the whole story, Lena said. Her voice was level, but her eyes were swimming. You want to ruin our family tonight? Then you owe me the truth. Sandra looked at Troy, then at Lena. It's complicated. It's not, I cut in. She's been having an affair. She was going to drop that bomb tonight and blame me for reacting badly. Only I didn't react. I planned. Silence swallowed the room. It was as if time slowed. Dennis finally broke it. Williams, how long have you been planning this? 3 months, I said, since the career change comment. You've been lying to me for 3 months. Sandra shrieked. No. I've been protecting myself for 3. You've been lying for 6. That's when Joyce stood up. Barely 5 feet, but she carried the weight of generations. Sandra Elizabeth, she said, in a voice sharp as a blade. You tell me what's going on. Right now. Sandra broke. Not with rage, but with shame. I didn't mean for this to happen, she said. I felt invisible. Williams works so much. We never connect. So you cheated? Joyce snapped. Sandra looked at Troy, but he was already distancing himself. This wasn't the fantasy he'd signed up for. I think I should go, Troy muttered. Yeah, I said. I think you should. He left without another word. Sandra cried harder. The drama was done, but the fallout was just beginning. She picked up the documents again. This can't all be legal. Dennis, I asked. He finally spoke. The post-nup holds. Williams protected everything acquired after it was signed. What about alimony? Sandra, he said, carefully, you handed him grounds for a fault divorce in front of witnesses. But I gave up my career. You work part-time, Lena said quietly. Dad paid for everything. Lena, honey, you don't understand. No, Mom, I do. You betrayed us. And Dad shielded me from it. Joyce nodded slowly. Your father's a good man. He didn't deserve this. And what do I deserve? Sandra asked. You threw that away when you started lying, I said. The manager reappeared, visibly nervous. Folks, we do have other guests. We're leaving, I said. I stood, left money on the table, enough for the bill and then some. Williams, Sandra said, as I helped Lena gather her things. As Lena helped me with my jacket, she said, we need to talk. We just did, I replied. In front of everyone you wanted to impress. You got your moment, Sandra. You told them all how much better you deserve. Now you're going to find out what better looks like when you're 49, jobless, broke, and husbandless. The house, Lena's, the cars, the boat, the cabin. Also Lena's. Sandra had signed the documents that made it possible. I didn't know what I was signing, she muttered. You knew exactly what you signed. Your lawyer explained every word. You just never thought you'd trigger them. Sandra looked around at the once friendly faces. Now they were cold, or sad, or just disappointed. Mom, she said to Joyce. Joyce shook her head. You made your choice, Sandra. Live with it. I kissed Joyce goodbye, shook hands with the men. My sister Beth hugged me tight. You okay? She whispered. I will be, I said. Lena and I walked out together. Sandra called out, but we didn't stop. In the parking lot, Lena finally broke. I'm sorry, Dad, she sobbed. I'm so sorry she did that. I held her close as she cried. None of this is your fault, I said. You graduated with honors. That's what matters. The rest is just noise. We stood there for a while, watching cars roll in and out. Families with quiet dinners. No drama. No explosions. What happens now? Lena asked. Now we go home, I said, and figure out what's next. 3 days later, Sandra called. Williams, we need to talk. About what? About fixing this. Working things out. I was at Driftline Construction, coordinating a shipment to Omaha. There's nothing to fix, I said. You made your choice. Troy and I, it's not working. He thinks I'm too old. I leaned back in my chair. Not my problem. Please. I made a mistake. I was confused. I'll sign anything. Counseling, whatever you want. Anything. Yes. Then don't call me again. I hung up. An hour later, my lawyer called. Sandra's attorney wants to meet. She's claiming the post-nup was signed under duress. I laughed. Dennis Peterson witnessed it. So did 2 bank officers. She had her own lawyer. She's also asking for settlement. She can take what she brought into the marriage. Her clothes, her car, and the debt from Troy's gifts. That's it. Next morning, Sandra showed up at my place. Our old house. Lena's house now. I'm not letting you in, I said through the door. I just want to talk. So talk. I know you hate me, she said. But Lena shouldn't suffer for my mistakes. She's not. She has a home, a trust fund, and a father who stayed. Williams, please. I don't have a home. I opened the door. 3 days had aged her by years. No muck-up. Old clothes. Hair tied back. You should have thought of that before calling me a boring loser at our daughter's graduation. Sandra cried again. I know it was wrong, but I can't undo it. No, I said. You can't. I closed the door and returned to my coffee. Normal kitchen. Quiet house. 6 months later, I was fixing the fence. Lena walked out with 2 beers. How's school? Good. Mom called again. Sandra had been calling since the divorce. Lena listened, then shared the gist. What now? She works at a gym in Ankeny. She asked about Christmas. What did you say? Told her she made her choice. That's my girl. We sat on the porch, beers in hand. The yard looked good. Better than when Sandra complained about every detail. Do you miss her? Lena asked. I thought about it. I miss who I thought she was. But not the woman who tried to destroy us for entertainment. Good, Lena said. Because Troy dumped her. For someone younger. I raised an eyebrow. How do you know that? Rebecca told me. She works at the gym. I laughed. Couldn't help it. It's not funny, Dad. No, I said, wiping my eyes. It's perfect. We finished our beers, watching the sun go down over our yard. Just us. No drama. No lies. No personal trainers. Sandra got exactly what she wanted, a chance to find out if the grass was greener. It wasn't. Moving on to the next story. We need fresh blood to take this company forward. My name is Walter Rains. I'm 39 years old, and I built this place from the ground up. 3 years of my life went into Christress Global, turning a shaky startup concept into a functioning enterprise. While others were talking about disruption and innovation, I was crawling under server racks at 3 a.m., fixing the systems their flashy ideas broke. That comment came from Weston Hale during our quarterly review meeting. He had been with us for just 6 months. 6. Meanwhile, I was there from day one, back when our HQ was a converted warehouse in Charlotte, all folding tables and extension cords. The founders used to know my name, used to understand that without the back-end infrastructure I built, their revolutionary product was just shiny vaporware. Weston sat at the head of the table like he ran the place. Maybe he did now. The board brought him in post-Series B funding as director of operations. Fresh perspective, they said. Strategic leadership. He came in with expensive suits and a polished pitch deck, full of buzzwords that made investors feel clever. Synergy, scalability, market penetration. I watched as he flipped through slides stacked with rainbow-colored graphs and reorganized team charts. The last part made my stomach drop. Restructuring never bodes well for people like me. Walter, your work has been adequate, he said, eyes still glued to his laptop. But we need to move faster, think bigger. The old ways are slowing us down. Adequate. That was what he called 3 years of building this company's backbone from scratch. I didn't react. I just nodded, made a note on my tablet. But something shifted inside me, cold alert. It told me to start looking closer. Back in my office, I opened the company directory. Weston had hired 4 new people in the last month alone. Fancy titles. Fat paychecks. None of them were there when the servers crashed mid-demo or when we pulled all-nighters during holidays. None of them knew the software everyone praised was written on a machine I bought myself when we couldn't afford proper gear. I pulled up my contract and read it properly for the first time since I signed. There were things in there I had forgotten, things that could matter now. The next morning, Weston announced a company-wide launch party. I remember joining Christress Global when it was just Jacob Torres and Peter Caldwell with a dream and $15,000,000. They needed someone to actually build what they were selling. That was me. I worked 6 months for equity, putting in 90-hour weeks above a pizza joint with no heat and barely functioning AC. But we were building something real. Year 2 was the turning point. My custom database system fixed a speed bottleneck that had been crushing our beta tests. Suddenly, we were 3 times faster than competitors. Jacob called it a breakthrough. Peter said we'd be millionaires. I just felt proud. We hired staff, got an office, signed big clients. Tech blogs started noticing. Jacob and Peter did all the press, but they gave credit to the brilliant technical team. That meant me. My dad used to call every Sunday. He worked construction for 40 years and understood pride in solid work. You built something that lasts, he told me. That matters more than money. Then the changes came. Subtle at first. Weston began excluding me from meetings, made decisions about systems and security without consulting me. When I asked about upcoming projects, he told me to focus on maintenance. Leave the innovation to the fresh talent. Fresh talent, like Tyler Morrison. A shiny computer science degree, 8 weeks on the job, and suddenly the new go-to guy. Weston asked for his input constantly. Tyler suggested modern frameworks, AI add-ons, total system rebuilds. Great ideas on paper, but he didn't understand why we built things the way we did. He didn't know the battles we fought to get here. So I documented everything. Architecture, shortcuts, patches, workarounds. I backed it all up. Not to sabotage, but because 3 years in startups taught me one thing: plan for the worst. Then came the invite to the launch party, and I wasn't on the planning list. The email came Tuesday morning. Subject: team restructuring. I opened it expecting another HR update. Instead, it was my termination notice. As part of our efforts to streamline operations and position the company for accelerated growth, Your position has been eliminated effective immediately. Please coordinate with HR for offboarding procedures. Just like that. Final compensation. No phone call. No meeting. No explanation. Just a form letter that could have been sent to anyone. After 3 years of building their entire technical infrastructure, I got the same goodbye as someone who had joined last month. I sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes, reading the email over and over. The words didn't change. The meaning didn't soften. I had been discarded like obsolete hardware, replaced by people who used the right jargon and fit Weston's polished version of a modern tech company. But here was what Weston didn't know. Here was the piece he missed while rushing to modernize. When I originally built our core systems, I had retained certain intellectual property rights, standard freelance protections my attorney friend insisted on before I went full-time. Most companies would have revised the agreement. But Jacob and Peter were desperate to keep me, and they signed everything I asked for. That meant I still owned key components. The encryption protocols running the database, the custom API frameworks connecting our systems, and the deployment keys for our live servers. All built with code I retained legal rights to. Weston had just fired the only person who held the real keys to his tech empire. I drove home and opened my laptop. The launch celebration was scheduled for next Friday. Big event. Infestor presentaciones. Media coverage. Live demos of our revolutionary platform. Weston had everything arranged. Except one thing. He never asked me for the master deployment key. I spent the next few days preparing. Not revenge, exactly. Just something fitting for the occasion. A reminder of what he lost when he decided my work was adequate. I put on my best suit Friday evening and headed to the launch event. The Grand Bridge Convention Center was buzzing. 500 people in business attire, champagne in hand, networking like their jobs depended on it. Journalists roamed the crowd. Potential clients studied our promotional packets while sales reps hovered nearby. I hadn't been invited. Didn't matter. I still had employee access, and security recognized me from years of events. No one questioned my presence. The main room had a huge screen with our logo and the tagline, Innovation Unleashed. Weston stood on stage, confident in a tailored suit, mic in hand. He looked the part of a visionary CEO. Polished, composed, powerful. Ladies and gentlemen, he began. Tonight marks a turning point in the future of data management. The audience clapped politely. A live demo showed our platform processing thousands of transactions in real time. Charts popped with performance metrics. Everything looked flawless. I moved closer to the stage, position where he could see me. His eyes locked with mine for a brief second. A flicker of surprise. But he recovered quickly. Weston always knew how to stay composed under pressure. That was probably why the board loved him. This company has come this far because we made bold decisions, he said. We broke free from legacy systems and embraced fresh vision. Tonight, we celebrate not just innovation, but a culture of progress. More applause. I spotted Tyler Morrison near the front, nodding along. Others around him, new hires with shiny titles, looked proud, unaware they were standing on a foundation they hadn't built. Weston gestured to the screen behind him. What you see here is the result of 3 years of relentless development. Our proprietary platform is the fastest and most secure in the market. We have solved problems others still don't understand. 3 years. My 3 years. But Weston presented it like the collective success of his new team. Tonight isn't just about looking back, he continued. It's about stepping into the future without limits. We're no longer weighed down by outdated thinking. That cold sensation returned to my chest. Weston was building to something, a final proclamation to crown himself as the architect of this transformation. To reach greatness, you make hard choices, he said. You let go of those who can't adapt, whose methods belong to a different era. The audience leaned in. The moment was coming. I reached into my jacket pocket and felt the small wrapped box I had brought with me. Everything was going exactly as I had expected. Walter could not resist making a spectacle out of his victory. He needed everyone to know how much better things would be without people like me dragging down his innovative team. He was about to give me the perfect opportunity to deliver my gift. In fact, Walter continued, his voice carrying clearly through the convention center. I want to be completely transparent about the changes we've made to position this company for success. Earlier this week, we eliminated several positions that no longer aligned with our strategic direction. I watched the faces in the crowd. Most people looked mildly uncomfortable with the sudden shift toward personnel discussions. This was supposed to be a product launch celebration, not a corporate restructuring announcement. But Walter seemed energized by having such a large audience for his management philosophy. One person in particular had been with the company since its early days. Walter Rain spent 3 years here, contributing what he could to our development efforts. But as we evolved into a more sophisticated organization, it became clear that his approach was holding us back. A few people in the audience turned to look at each other uncertainly. Walter was mentioning specific names now, specific individuals who had been terminated. This felt personal in a way that made everyone uncomfortable. But Walter didn't seem to notice the shifting mood. He was too focused on his narrative of transformation and progress. Walter represented everything this company needed to move beyond: outdated methodologies, resistance to innovation, and an inability to think strategically about our future direction. Tonight, we celebrate our freedom from that kind of limitation. He raised his champagne glass toward the crowd. To the employees who drag us down for too long, may they find opportunities better suited to their capabilities somewhere else. The audience gave a scattered round of applause, but I could tell many people were confused by the hostile tone. This wasn't how successful executives typically discussed former employees at public events. Walter was revealing something ugly about his character, and everyone could see it. But he was also revealing something else, something he probably didn't realize. During his speech, I had been watching the demonstration screen behind him. Our platform was running smoothly, processing sample data and displaying real-time analytics. Everything looked perfect, but I knew something Walter didn't know. The system was running on cache data from our development environment. The live production servers that would handle actual client traffic were controlled by a different set of deployment protocols that required authentication from the master encryption key. The key that I had generated using my own algorithms and retained legal ownership of, according to my original contract. Walter thought he was celebrating his complete control over the company. He thought eliminating me had removed the last obstacle to his vision of streamlined operations and innovative thinking. He had no idea that his shiny new platform couldn't actually function without my cooperation. The demonstration he was showing the audience was essentially a recording, a pretty facade with no substance behind it. When clients tried to access their accounts on Monday morning, when investors attempted to verify the capabilities they had been promised tonight, when journalists wrote articles about the revolutionary technology they had witnessed, everyone would discover the same thing. Nothing worked. The production servers were locked behind encryption that only I could unlock. The custom APIs that connected client systems to our database would return error messages. The processing speeds and security features Walter had been bragging about would be completely inaccessible. I had built the entire technical foundation of this company, and I had retained the legal right to control access to it. Walter had been so eager to get rid of me that he had never bothered to verify whether he actually could. Now he was about to find out. I stepped forward through the crowd, moving toward the stage. People noticed me walking and turned to watch. Some of them probably recognized me from previous company events. Others might have wondered who I was and why I looked so calm while Walter continued his victory speech. It was time to deliver my gift. I walked directly to the front of the stage, maintaining eye contact with Walter as he continued his presentation. The audience began to murmur quietly as they noticed someone approaching the speaker. Security guards positioned around the room looked alert but did not move to intercept me. I was well-dressed, walking calmly, and showing no signs of aggressive behavior. Walter finally noticed the distraction and paused his speech. He looked down at me with an expression that mixed annoyance with curiosity. This wasn't part of his planned program, and he clearly didn't appreciate the interruption. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said loudly enough for my voice to carry through the room. "I apologize for interrupting such an important celebration." The crowd turned their attention toward me. Conversation stopped. Even the background music seemed to fade as everyone focused on whatever was about to happen. "My name is Walter Rains," I continued, pulling the small wrapped box from my jacket pocket. "Mr. Hill was just talking about me. I wanted to make sure I had the opportunity to properly congratulate him on his new direction for the company." Walter stared at me with obvious displeasure. He hadn't expected me to appear at this event, and he certainly hadn't planned for me to address his audience directly. But backing down now would make him look weak in front of investors and potential clients. "Walter," he said into his microphone, forcing a smile, "how generous of you to attend our celebration. I hope you enjoyed the presentation." "Oh, I did," I replied, holding up the wrap box. "In fact, I was so impressed by your vision for the future that I brought you a gift. Something to commemorate this historic moment." The audience watched with fascination. This kind of personal drama wasn't something they expected at a corporate product launch, but it was certainly more entertaining than standard business presentations. Walter reached into his jacket pocket and felt the small wrap box. Everything was unfolding exactly as he'd anticipated. Hale couldn't resist turning his so-called victory into a public spectacle. He needed to be celebrated, to have everyone acknowledge how much better the company would be without those like Walter holding it back. What he didn't know was that he was handing Walter the perfect moment. In fact, Hale continued, his voice echoing through the ballroom, "I believe in being fully transparent about our recent strategic changes. Earlier this week, we restructured some roles that no longer aligned with where we're headed." The crowd's mood shifted. Unease crept in. This was supposed to be a night of celebration, not job cuts. But Hale was energized, his ego fully in control. One name in particular stands out: Walter Rowe. He was here since the beginning. For 3 years, he played a part in our early efforts. But as we evolved, it became obvious that his approach was outdated and limiting. People exchanged uneasy glances. Now it was personal. Hale was calling out terminated employees by name, and it left a bitter aftertaste. But he kept going, intoxicated by the sound of his own narrative. Walter represented the very mindset we had to outgrow, resistant to change, lacking strategic foresight. Tonight, we celebrate freedom from such burdens. He raised a glass. To those who couldn't keep up, may they find roles more suited to their skills elsewhere. A few claps, mostly awkward. Hale's smug grin faded a little as confusion began to spread. But behind him, the screen kept running flawlessly, showing the platform's live demo. Everything appeared seamless. Except Walter knew the truth. That wasn't the real platform. It was running on cached demo data. The actual production environment, the one clients would use, was locked behind security protocols that Walter alone could access. His original contract had protected his rights. As the crowd stared at the screen, impressed, Walter stepped forward, weaving through the audience toward the stage. Whispers rose as people noticed him. Some remembered him from previous events. Others simply sensed something was happening. Walter walked with quiet purpose. On stage, Hale paused, distracted by the movement. "Ladies and gentlemen," Walter said clearly, sorry to interrupt. All eyes turned. Silence fell. "My name is Walter Rowe. I believe Mr. Hale was referring to me just now." He held up the wrap box. "I wanted to personally thank him for tonight and bring him something to mark the occasion." Cameras lifted. Phones started recording. Hale forced a grin. "Walter, that's thoughtful." He stepped off the stage, probably thinking this would be a quick handshake and a retreat. Walter handed him the box with a quiet, "From your biggest mistake." Hale didn't register the comment. He tore open the paper quickly, eager to get it over with. Inside, a single USB drive. The label read, Production Deployment Key, Christensen Global Core Platform. Hale stared pale. What is this? Exactly what it says, Walter replied. The key to the actual platform. The one thing you forgot. As if on cue, the big screen flickered, then died. Silence. Tablets across the room lost their connection. Laptops followed. Error messages began to appear. What did you do? Hale whispered. Walter shrugged. Gave you what you wanted. Freedom from those dragging you down. You're welcome. Panic rippled through the crowd. Investors placed calls. Clients packed their folders. Reporters took furious notes. Tyler Morrison appeared at Hale's side. The production environment is locked. Nothing's responding. Fix it, Hale barked. I can't, Tyler replied. I don't even understand the encryption. It's all custom. And Walter watched it all, calm, centered. As the chaos bloomed, the key's right there in your hand, he said. Just ask nicely. Then he turned and left. In the parking lot, phones rang and voices rose. Some people recognized Walter. No one stopped him. In the days that followed, Christensen Global became a cautionary tale. Blogs mocked the failure. Investors pulled out. Client cancellé de contract. The valuation dropped by 60%. Hale called, then called again. First came offers, then desperation. Walter never answered. Instead, he met with Jacob Torres, one of the original founders. Jacob still owned 40%, and after the public disaster, he and 2 board members had seen enough. Hale was removed. The board offered Walter the role of director of operations and equity. He accepted with one condition: the newer hires like Tyler could stay. But they'd work under a team that respected the work that built the company. On Monday morning, Walter entered his credentials and unlocked the servers. The platform roared back to life. Clients barely noticed the glitch. Within a month, the company had recovered. And Hale? He found work in a smaller firm down south. But he never again underestimated the builders. Sometimes the best revenge is giving someone exactly what they asked for. Moving on to the next story. We need new horsepower. The words hit the conference room like a sledgehammer. I sat at the end of the polished table, my coffee growing cold as the board chairman's voice echoed off the glass walls. 18 years with Gravora Group, and this was how it ended. My name is Kim Briggs, 58 years old, and until that moment, I was Senior Vice President of Operations for one of Houston's most reliable logistics companies. I had built their route network from scratch, saved 3 major accounts during the 2008 recession, and guided the company through another downturn in 2020, without laying off a single driver. I thought that counted for something. We're bringing in someone with a fresh outlook, the chairman continued, not meeting my eyes. Someone who understands modern business dynamics. I knew exactly who that someone was. Chase Langford, 33 years old, married to the CEO's daughter. A background in lifestyle marketing, 0 experience in logistics. I'd heard the whispers for months. Family dinners where business was quietly decided. Golf outings where deals were made long before they reached the boardroom. I folded my hands on the table and waited. No point in arguing. No point in listing accomplishments or contracts I'd personally managed. The decision had been made, probably weeks ago. Kim, we appreciate everything you've done for Gravora Group, the CEO finally said, glancing in my direction. His voice carried the well-rehearsed cadence of someone who had practiced this moment. Your dedication has been noted. Noted. 18 years reduced to a single word. The meeting dragged on for another 20 minutes. They discussed transition plans, my replacement timeline, and the farewell gathering they'd be hosting. I said nothing. My mind was already elsewhere. In my jacket pocket, I felt the edge of a business card I'd been carrying for 3 months. A card that might change everything. After the meeting, I walked back to my office and started packing up my things. The farewell gathering was scheduled for Friday, just enough time for Chase to shadow me and absorb a fraction of what I'd spent nearly 2 decades building. As I placed my coffee mug in the cardboard box, my phone buzzed. A text from my daughter, Catherine. How did the board meeting go, Dad? I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I replied, Big changes coming. I didn't tell her I'd just been pushed out. Didn't mention the inexperienced replacement with a powerful last name. That conversation could wait until I figured out my next step. The business card in my pocket felt heavier now. It belonged to someone who'd reached out months ago, someone who understood the value of relationships in this industry, someone who might be very interested in what I had to offer. The next morning, I arrived at my office early, as usual, watching the sunrise stretch across the Houston skyline. I've been coming to this office since 2007, when Gravora Group was just another mid-sized company trying to survive. I helped change that. I remembered my first major win, the Petroax Industries contract, a $120 million deal that everyone said we were too small to manage. I spent 6 months learning their delivery needs, building rapport, and designing a route system that cut their costs by 15%. When we won that deal, the CEO shook my hand and said, "Kim, you just saved this company." That was back when he still remembered my name. Over the years, I built something real, relationships with drivers who trusted me, clients who respected our service, vendors who knew a handshake with Kim Briggs meant something. I worked through weekends, skipped vacations, mortgaged my house once to help cover payroll in 2009. But somewhere along the line, it shifted. Chase started showing up at meetings, sitting silently in the corner, taking notes on his phone, asking questions that revealed he had no understanding of our operations. Kyonouti said. I saw in their eyes. The warning signs built slowly. My input was no longer requested in major decisions. Budgets I once approved were rerouted to the finance department. When I raised concerns about a route change affecting our biggest account, I was told I was too focused on the past. 3 months ago, it became obvious. I was reviewing quarterly satisfaction reports when Alyssa Cormarmac from Petroax called me directly. We'd worked together for 8 years. I considered her a friend. "Kim, can I ask something off the record?" she said. "Is Gravora changing leadership? Some of our execs are hearing things." I was honest. "Nothing official yet," I said, "but there might be transitions." "I see." Then she gave me her personal card. "If anything changes, call me. What we've built matters." I thanked her, tucked the card into my wallet, and didn't think about it again until now. Now I understood what she'd really offered. Not just a card, a lifeline. By Friday, the farewell gathering loomed like a storm on the calendar. Same conference room, same glass walls. I spent the morning training Chase on our top accounts. He nodded along, but it was clear he didn't grasp the complexity. "So basically," he said at one point, "we just move stuff from point A to point B." I blinked slowly. That told me everything I needed to know. "Contract? How hard can it be?" Chase said with a laugh. I didn't correct him. I simply handed him the client folder and advised him to review the delivery specs carefully. At 3:30 p.m., I collected the last of my personal belongings and made my way to the conference room. There was a cake waiting, frosted with a blue "Thank you, Kim" on top. Maybe 20 people had shown up, mostly drivers and warehouse staff I'd worked alongside for years. None of the board members were present. Apparently, they had other priorities. The CEO gave a short speech about my loyalty and dedication. He highlighted my years of service, then offered generic wishes for my future. When he finished, Chase stepped forward. "I just want to say," he began, that usual smug grin forming. "Kim's done great work here, but business evolves. We need new energy, new ideas. Your time is up, old man. But don't worry. I'll take good care of what you've built." Silence. A few drivers shifted uncomfortably. One warehouse supervisor looked away entirely. I felt something go still inside me. Not anger, just finality. I didn't respond. No reaction. I shook hands with the ones who mattered and walked out, cardboard box in hand. In the parking lot, I sat in my truck for a long while, not turning the key. The sun was setting behind the Gravora building, casting long shadows across the lot. I thought about the 18 years of early starts, late nights, and everything in between. About the clients who depended on me. About the employees who trusted me. About Chase's smirk. Then I pulled out my phone and Alyssa Cormac's business card. She answered on the second ring. "Kim, I was wondering when you'd call." "The board made their move," I said. "Chase Langford, right?" The son-in-law with a marketing degree. That's the one. There was a pause. Kim, I think it's time we talk. Are you free for dinner tomorrow? I'll be there, I said. As I drove home, I didn't feel rage or bitterness. I felt clarity. The game wasn't over. It was just beginning. Saturday night, I met Alyssa at a quiet steakhouse on the west side of Houston. She had a corner booth, tucked away from the crowd. I understood why as soon as she pulled out a leather folder and laid a few documents on the table. Before we talk business, she said, I'm sorry about what happened. 18 years of partnership, and they replaced you with someone who asked me last week if our chemicals needed refrigerated trucks. I nearly laughed. Refrigerated trucks? For industrial lubricants? He confused us with a food distributor, she said, shaking her head. Kim, I've been in procurement for 15 years. No one's been more reliable than you. If you said a delivery was arriving Tuesday at 2 p.m., it arrived at 2 p.m. on the dot. She slid a document forward. This is our current contract with Gravora. $120 million over 3 years. Renewable. That's about 40% of their total revenue. I knew the numbers. Lived them. What Chase doesn't get, she continued, is this contract is built on relationships, not just rates. When the pipeline incident happened in 2018, you were on site by midnight. When our vendor failed last year during the freeze, you sourced a new supplier in 6 hours. I remembered both clearly. That's the job, I said. No, Alyssa replied. That's above and beyond for years. And now I'm expected to work with someone who thinks logistics is just boxes moving around. She leaned in. Petromax has authorized me to explore new logistics partnerships. Our contract with Gravora expires in 60 days. If we don't renew, they lose their biggest client. I set down my coffee. What are you suggesting? Balex Maritime approached us 6 months ago. They're expanding inland logistics and looking for leadership. I told them we were happy with our provider because you were still there. I saw now why she wanted the meeting off the record. If I joined Balex Maritime, then we'd have a reason to take their proposal seriously. For the next hour, Alyssa laid out the plan. Balex was local, well-funded, and ready to grow. They needed someone with experience, connections, and trust in the industry. The position? Executive consultant with equity. She pushed a paper across the table. The offer is strong. But more than that, it's a clean slate. No politics, no nepotism. I skimmed the terms. The base was competitive, but the equity potential? Massive. If Balex hit their targets, my shares would surpass my last 5 years' salary combined. There's one catch, she added. Balex wants a decision in 2 weeks. They plan to announce the new division head before month's end. 2 weeks isn't much time. It's enough for Gravora to realize what they lost. I'm telling them next Friday we're not renewing. And I'll be clear, we're seeking partners with actual experience. We finished dinner talking logistics. But my mind was already racing ahead. Contract? How hard could it be? I didn't correct him. I just handed him the client folder and suggested he read the delivery specifications thoroughly. At 3:30 p.m., I gathered the last of my personal things and made my way to the conference room. The company had brought in a sheet cake with "Thank you, Kim" written in blue icing. Maybe 20 people showed up, mostly drivers and warehouse crew who had known me for years. The board, of course, had other obligations. The CEO gave a short speech about my commitment and service. He spoke of my years with the company and offered best wishes for the future. Then Chase stepped up. I just want to say, he began, that smug grin creeping into place. Kim did some good things here. But business evolves. We need new ideas, new energy. Your time is over, old man. Don't worry. I'll take care of what you built. The room fell into an uneasy silence. Some drivers shifted in place. One of the warehouse leads looked down at his shoes. I felt something in me go very still. I didn't react. No debate. No farewell speech. I shook hands with those who mattered and left with my cardboard box. In the parking lot, I sat in my truck for a while, engine off. The setting sun cast long shadows over the pavement. I thought about the early mornings, the late nights. About clients who trusted me and employees who depended on me. About Chase's smirk, dismissing nearly 2 decades of grit. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out Alyssa Cormarmac's business card. She picked up on the second ring. Kim, I was wondering when you'd call. The board made their move, I said. Chase Langford, right? Marketing background. Family ties. Exactly. A pause. Then, Kim, we need to talk. Dinner tomorrow. I pulled out of the Gravora Group parking lot. No longer an employee. I'll be there. As I drove, I didn't feel anger or regret. I felt something clearer. Purpose. The game wasn't over. Saturday night, we met at a quiet steakhouse on the west side of Houston. Alyssa chose a booth tucked in a quiet corner. I understood why when she opened her portfolio and laid out documents on the table. Before we talk business, she said, I'm sorry about what happened. 18 years of partnership, and they replaced you with someone who asked me last week if we needed refrigerated trucks. For industrial lubricants. He thought we were a food distributor. She shook her head. Kim, I've been doing procurement for 15 years. No one is more reliable than you. When you say a delivery will arrive Tuesday at 2 p.m., it arrives Tuesday at 2 p.m. She slid a contract summary across the table. This is our deal with Gravora, $120 million over 3 years, up for renewal soon. That's 40% of their revenue. I knew the numbers by heart. Here's what Chase doesn't get. This contract exists because of trust, not just pricing. In 2018, during the pipeline issue, you were at our site at midnight. Last year, during the freeze, you found a new supplier in 6 hours. That's not typical. That's above and beyond. She leaned in. Petroax Industries has authorized me to explore alternatives. Our contract expires in 60 days. If we don't renew, they lose their biggest client. I set my cup down. What are you suggesting? Balex Maritime reached out 6 months ago. They're expanding inland logistics. They want experienced leadership. I delayed talks out of loyalty to Gravora, loyalty to you. But now, I understood. This wasn't just a dinner, it was a crossroads. If I joined Balex, we'd reconsider their offer. Over the next hour, she laid out the terms. Balex Maritime was well-funded, ambitious, and needed someone to lead the inland division. Executive consultant. Equity participation. Full control to build a team. The offer is solid, she said, sliding over a document. But more importantly, there's no nepotism. No politics. The salary was good. The equity, transformational. If Balex hit their goals, I'd earn more than the last 5 years combined. There's one catch, she added. They need your answer in 2 weeks. They want to launch before the month ends. 2 weeks. Enough time for Gravora to realize what they've lost. I'll be informing them next Friday. I'll make it clear we want leadership we can trust. As we finished dinner, my mind was already 10 moves ahead. Chase would have 9 days with Petroax before learning they were pulling out. No connections. No clue what went wrong. Driving home, I felt anticipation. Not spite, just a chance to prove that experience still matters. I had 48 hours to decide, but truthfully, I made up my mind the moment Chase called me irrelevant. Monday, I called Balex. Meeting set. Their offices overlooked the ship channel, sharp and modern. I could see why Alyssa was impressed. Victoria Henley, their CEO, greeted me. Former ExxonMobil, sharp as a tack. Kim, your reputation precedes you. The Petroax deal alone is more than many firms' entire revenue. Alyssa mentioned you might be exploring inland logistics. Not exploring, expanding. 18 months in the making, we needed the right lead. Someone with your track record. She paused. Gravora's client retention is declining. 3 clients gone in 6 months. Service and communication issues. They're covering costs with credit, and their debt ratios are climbing. She handed me a folder, analysis, filings, industry chatter. Gravora was faltering, replacing expertise with family. Short-sighted, I said. She nodded. The logistics world is small. Word spreads fast. They weren't just looking to grow, they were eyeing struggling rivals. And I was a shortcut to expansion. We're talking to 2 more of your old clients. They're open to switching, if you're with us. I knew the names. Accounts I had cultivated for years. If I join, you run the division. Full authority. Build your team. Just keep doing what made you successful. Driving home, I saw the big picture. Gravora bet that clients stayed loyal to logos. But clients trust people, not buildings. Tuesday morning, I signed the deal. Victoria finalized it personally. My first call was to Alyssa. It's done. Perfect. I meet Chase Friday. Should be fun. What will you say? The truth. Petroax isn't renewing. We're pursuing leadership we trust. I imagine Chase scrambling. Meetings, emails, panic. But by then, it will be too late. Alyssa, I appreciate the trust. This isn't risk, Kim. It's smart business. Petroax needs reliability. That's you. Wednesday and Thursday, I work from home. Transition plans. Client files. Balex had tools Gravora only dreamed of. In many ways, I was stepping into something better. Thursday evening, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Gravora Group's main number. Kim, this is James from the CEO's office. Mr. Davidson would like to schedule a meeting with you tomorrow morning. Would 9 a.m. work? I nearly laughed. What does he want to discuss? He didn't give specifics, but he said it concerns client relationships and transition planning. Tell Mr. Davidson I'm no longer available for transition planning. My employment with Gravora Group ended last Friday. Sir, I think there may be some misunderstanding. This would be a paid consultation. There's no misunderstanding, James. Have a good evening. Friday morning, while I was reviewing contracts at Balex Maritime's offices, Victoria knocked on my door. You want to see this, she said, handing me her phone. It was a news alert from the Houston Business Journal. Gravora Group loses major client. Stock drops 15%, asterisk. The article was short but accurate. Petromax Industries had announced they were ending their logistics contract with Gravora Group, citing a realignment with a new provider. The market reacted swiftly. Shares fell in heavy trading. How did this hit the media so fast? I asked. Petromax is publicly traded. They had to disclose the termination, Victoria replied, smiling. And the business world's very interested in who they're switching to. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Kim, this is Chase Langford. We need to talk immediately. Call me. Asterisk. I showed it to Victoria. What do you think? I think Chase Langford is having a rough day. And it's about to get worse. That afternoon, I received 2 more calls from former clients asking about consulting availability. By evening, the word was out in Houston's logistics scene. The Experience Pro was back in play. I didn't call Chase. I didn't speak to Gravora Group's executives. I didn't post statements or brag. I just picked up the phone and booked meetings. The market would do the rest. 3 weeks later, I was in my new office at Balex Maritime when Victoria appeared with a folded newspaper. You're going to want to read this, she said, laying on my desk. Gravora Group seeks emergency funding after client exodus, asterisk. The article detailed everything. Petromax Industries had left first, then Morrison Chemical and Gulf States Energy followed, both naming Balex Maritime and our team's experience as the reason. In less than a month, Gravora had lost nearly 70% of their major contracts. The board had called an emergency session. Chase Langford had resigned, citing personal reasons. The CEO had accepted a bridge loan from private investors to stay afloat. There's more, Victoria said, pointing to a side article. Langford joins father-in-law's real estate firm, asterisk apparently. Logistics hadn't been the right fit. I folded the paper. What about Gravora's remaining ops? They're downsizing. Jacob Miller's now operations manager. He reached out yesterday, asking if we consider partnership. I remember Jacob, solid guy, good instincts. He'd inherited a tough job. What did you say? That we're open to subcontracting if they meet our standards. It was the right response. Balex was growing fast, and we'd need support. If Gravora could rebuild with quality, we'd talk. But we'll be business, not personal. 6 months later, I passed Gravora's old HQ. A for-lease sign hung in the window. They'd moved to a smaller space on the city's south side, focusing on subcontracting. Jacob was trying to salvage the brand, but the damage was done. Most clients had moved on. I stopped at a coffee shop. My phone buzzed. Catherine. Dad saw the Forbes article. Congrats on the Balex expansion. The Forbes piece had praised our growth and inland market success. We'd tripled our client base, expanded into 3 new states, and my equity stake was now worth more than 2 decades at Gravora. But what mattered most was walking into our warehouse each morning, seeing loyal drivers and long-term clients, building something real. I finished my coffee and drove to the office. Victoria was already in, reviewing our next expansion proposals. We had opportunities in Dallas and San Antonio. Demand was strong. "Morning, Kim," she said as I entered the conference room. "Let's get to work," I said. The phone rang, and I answered, just like always. Moving on to the next story. "You're just a little too old school for where we're headed. We need someone who can innovate." My name is Hunter Donnelly. I'm 62 years old, and until this morning, I was the Chief Financial Officer at Meridian Manufacturing. For the past 15 years, I helped steer the company from a modest, family-run operation in Cincinnati into a publicly traded enterprise with 18 plants across the Midwest. I'd weathered 2 recessions, 1 acquisition that nearly derailed us, and more boardroom drama than I care to recount. I wasn't flashy. I didn't wine and dine investors. But our filings were always on time, our numbers never raised a single red flag, and we built a reputation for reliability. Then Travis Mercer showed up. He was 36, all swagger and sound bites. Designer blazers, limited edition sneakers, buzzwords in every sentence. He was the board's idea of the future. They brought him in as CEO 3 months ago, and within weeks, he was reorganizing everything in sight, talking about synergy, alignment, disruption, and something about redefining velocity. I knew what was coming the minute he booked a one-on-one meeting. "The market's evolving, Hunter," he said as he lounged back in my office chair. My chair, feet crossed on my desk like it was already his. "We need someone who speaks the language of modern finance." I didn't say much. Just gave a polite nod and offered a firm, final handshake. "We're bringing in Zachary Hughes," he continued. "Brilliant guy. He's 29. Just at a TEDx talk on financial transformation. It's going viral." "I see," I said calmly. "When's the transition?" Travis looked mildly surprised by my composure. 2 weeks. We'll make the announcement at the next board meeting." That afternoon, while the rest of the staff sat in an all-hands meeting about our bold new direction, I packed to my office. 15 years of work, all reduced to a single cardboard box. A few framed family photos. A commemorative coin from our IPO. The leather-bound portfolio my wife, Patricia, gave me before she passed. As I walked out, I caught sight of Bethany from accounts standing by the elevator. Her eyes were red. She'd been with me since the start. "Don't worry," I told her. "It's just the cycle." What I didn't tell her was that I'd spent the last 6 months quietly keeping tabs on a growing list of financial irregularities, small at first, but growing, ever since Travis took the reins. I wasn't planning revenge. I was doing my job, even if nobody had asked me to, even if they thought I was already irrelevant. I grew up working in my father's hardware store in Covington, Kentucky, just across the river from Cincinnati. He taught me early, numbers don't lie, even when people do. I stocked shelves by day, balanced the books by night, and put myself through college without ever leaving home. I got job offers after graduation, bigger firms in bigger cities, but I chose to stay local, to build something here. I worked my way up through a few regional businesses before I got a call from Harold Phillips, the founder of Meridian, in the middle of the 2008 recession. "I need someone who cares if the books balance," Harold said. "Someone who knows how to keep the lights on." So I joined. For the first 10 years, Harold and I worked side by side, turning Meridian into something durable. When he retired, he handed the reins to Diana Wright, a steady leader who respected process. We didn't always agree, but she listened. Under her, we grew, modestly, sustainably. No drama. Then Diana retired. And the board, eager for something fresh, brought in Travis Mercer, Harvard MBA. Former executive at a Silicon Valley startup that had plenty of press coverage and not a dollar of profit. From day one, the culture began to shift. The first red flag came in week 2. Travis bypassed our procurement process to hire a flashy marketing firm, run by one of his business school classmates, at 4 times our usual budget. When I raised a concern, he just smiled. "We're thinking bigger now, Hunter. Those old constraints, They don't apply anymore. The second red flag came when he shuffled the reporting structure, rerouting financial oversight through his newly created Chief Innovation Officer. That person reported directly to him, not me. The third? I overheard him on a call describing our accounting practices as a little too old-fashioned, saying the books needed more creative solutions. That's when I started watching more carefully. Small things. Vendor payments routed through new shell accounts. Consulting invoices that didn't align with contracted services. Bonuses reclassified as operational expenses. None of it large enough to trigger alarms on their own, but cumulatively, it painted a very different picture. So I documented. Quietly. Diligently. It wasn't about making a scene. It was about making sure that if Meridian collapsed under the weight of innovation, someone would know when the cracks started and who caused them. Because my father didn't just teach me to balance books. He taught me not to flinch when the numbers didn't add up. The irregularities began to pile up. Vendor contracts with companies I couldn't verify, consultancy fees with no corresponding deliverables, and budget reallocations that bypassed department head approvals. At first, I flagged them mentally. Then I began noting them down. I wasn't the only one who noticed. Kevin, one of our internal auditors, stopped by one evening as I reviewed our quarterly statements. The office was quiet, most of the staff gone. There's something off with the tech investment tracking, he said quietly. The numbers don't match between the initial entries and the executive summaries. Document everything, I told him. Keep it clean, keep it factual. Patricia would have told me to make noise, to call out in a board meeting, put it on record, and walk away with my chin high. But cancer took her 3 years ago, and with her went a certain fire. I'd grown more methodical, more patient. So instead of confrontation, I opened a new folder. I started downloading questionable transactions, cross-referencing inconsistencies. I didn't talk. I didn't raise red flags. I simply built a record, silently, precisely, while showing the same steady face in meetings, even as Travis brought in more of his people and systematically pushed mine out. It wasn't paranoia. The patterns were too frequent, too deliberate. Something bigger was happening, and it all seemed to center around one name, Zachary Hughes. My final board meeting lasted 22 minutes. No speech, no parting words, no plaque or token of thanks. Just an agenda item, CFO transition update. Travis delivered it like a sales pitch, all smiles and buzzwords. I sat at the far end of the table and listened. William Foster, the board chair, couldn't quite meet my eyes. He'd been there when Harold hired me, when Meridian was just trying to stay afloat. I'd expected something from him, even if it was only a nod to the years I'd given. But instead, he nodded at Travis's updates on capital strategy like they were gospel. The meeting moved briskly on to the next item. Plans for the new downtown headquarters Travis wanted to build, a flagship symbol of our next chapter, he called it. As people filed out, William paused by my chair. You've been an asset, Hunter, he said, patting my shoulder awkwardly. Best of luck. An asset, like a forklift. Something useful, now depreciated. I returned to what was now Zachary's office to collect my box. Through the glass wall, I could see Travis showing him around, pointing to graphs and dashboards I developed as if they were some artifact from another era. Bethany was waiting at my door, an envelope in hand. The accounting team took up a collection, she said. We wanted to give you a proper send-off dinner. I thanked her quietly, knowing I wouldn't go. As she turned to leave, I stopped her. Bethany, when did invoices from Vertex Solutions start appearing? She tilted her head, thinking. February, I think. Right after Mr. Mercer announced the Digital Transformation Initiative. February, 2 weeks before Travis first mentioned bringing in Zachary. That night, I cleared off my dining room table and laid everything out. 6 months of data. Invoices for services never rendered. Foreign consulting fees with no attached documentation. Transactions routed through shell companies. All of it stacked into tidy rows. But the trail didn't stop there. It all pointed to a holding company called Alpine Innovations, registered just 3 days before Travis was announced as CEO. It was all clear now. Travis hadn't brought in Zachary because I was too old school. He brought him in because I was in the way. They were siphoning money through fake vendors and padded consulting contracts, burying the trail under broad-sounding initiatives like digital transformation. They didn't need a modern CFO. They needed someone who wouldn't ask questions, someone who wouldn't notice. And I noticed everything. I sat back in my chair, looking at the evidence spread in front of me. For the first time since Patricia died, I felt something sharp cut through the dullness that had followed her absence. Not anger exactly. Something colder, more precise. Focus. I opened my laptop and began organizing everything. Transaction logs, vendor profiles, shell company records, cross-reference timelines, payment trails. I wasn't going to confront Travis. I wasn't going to call a press conference or storm into another board meeting. That would have been noise. This would be precision. Going to the press, that wasn't my style. I'd always believed in letting the numbers speak for themselves. This time, I just needed to make sure the right people were listening when they did. A week after my departure, I made the decision to reach out to William Foster directly. Despite his distant farewell, he had always been fair with me. He deserved a chance to address this before it spiraled into something worse. I left a message with his assistant. Nothing urgent, just a request to discuss a few financial concerns for my final weeks at Meridian. He returned my call the next day. His voice was polite but guarded. "Hunter," he said, "good to hear from you." There was a pause. "Travis mentioned you might reach out." My stomach tightened. "Did he?" "Yes. He said you were having some difficulty letting go. Said there were concerns about the new reporting systems. Zachary's already addressed most of it, I believe." "William," I said carefully, "there are irregularities that predate Zachary's arrival. Significant ones." There was a long silence on the line. "Look, Hunter, I know this must be difficult. 15 years is a long time with one company. But the board has full confidence in Travis. Zachary's made improvements already. The systems you have flagged, they're being modernized." "That's not. I've got another call." "I'm afraid," he cut in. "Maybe we can catch up at the holiday party? I hear you're still on the invite list." His tone had that practice finality. The line went dead before I could say another word. The next morning, an email landed in my inbox. It was from Meridian's legal department. The language was courteous, but the message was unmistakable. Any claims of financial impropriety made without substantial evidence could be considered defamatory. A soft threat wrapped in polite legalese. They also reminded me, ever so kindly, of my continuing confidentiality obligations. They were closing ranks. Travis had expected I might notice the discrepancies, and he'd made sure to poison the well before I could speak. If I looked like a disgruntled ex-employee, my claims would fall flat. I needed another route. I reached out to Kevin from Internal Audit. He'd been on my team for 8 years, detail-oriented, loyal, and sharp. If anyone else had noticed what I had, it would be him. We met at a quiet diner well away from downtown. Kevin looked tense the moment he walked in, eyes flicking around the room like he expected someone to be watching. "They promoted me," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "Congratulations," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "Reporting to Zachary," he said. "New title. Big raise. How's that going?" He stared into his coffee. "They've changed everything. Reporting systems, software protocols. Zachary says it's streamlined, efficient. And is it?" He looked up, face drawn. "Hunter, I can't talk about this. They had me sign additional NDAs. And they're watching everyone who was close to you." I nodded slowly. "They're saying things," Kevin added, "about why you left." "What things?" He lowered his voice. "That you were resisting necessary changes. That you made mistakes in last quarter's report. That Zachary had to clean up your mess. Some people are even saying there were ethical concerns." I gripped my coffee mug so tightly I thought the ceramic might crack. "They're rewriting my story," I said flatly. Kevin looked ashamed. "I should go," he said, throwing some bills on the table. "I've got a mortgage. Twins starting college next year. I can't risk it." "It's all right," I said, managing a small smile. "Take care of your family." He left quickly, leaving me sitting there with more clarity than comfort. The board wouldn't hear me. My team was scared into silence or bought off entirely. And now, Travis was working to destroy my reputation, making it nearly impossible for me to raise concerns without sounding bitter, unhinged, or out of touch. They thought they had me boxed in, but there was one thing they'd overlooked. During my last few days at Meridian, while everyone assumed I was quietly packing up and fading out, I'd done something standard for transitions, created a temporary emergency admin account on the audit server. Nothing sneaky, nothing outside protocol. It was normal during system transfers. Only no one thought to deactivate it. And I still had access. It wouldn't last forever. Someone would eventually notice. But for now, it was a lifeline, a way to verify what I suspected. To build something indisputable. Not rumors. Not accusations. Evidence. The access wouldn't last forever, but maybe, just maybe, it would be enough. That night, I logged into Meridian's audit server using the emergency credentials I'd quietly created before leaving. I knew someone would eventually notice and shut down the account, so I moved fast. Every path I had previously flagged, I followed with fresh intensity. What I uncovered made my earlier concerns seem almost naive. Alpine Innovations wasn't just a shell, it was the nucleus of a larger network. Dozens of interconnected holding companies, funneling transactions back and forth in patterns clearly designed to obscure their origin. Some of the paper trails stretched back before Travis Mercer had ever set foot at Meridian. This wasn't opportunistic theft. It was a calculated, deliberate infiltration. The deeper I went, the clearer the picture became. Travis hadn't been hired despite his unimpressive resume. He'd been installed. His former startup, the Silicon Valley outfit that had generated more hype than revenue, had been funded by the same private investment group that recently acquired 3 seats on Meridian's board. One of those seats was now held by Jacob Foster, William Foster's nephew, appointed just 6 months ago. This wasn't about modernizing finance. This was about bleeding Meridian dry under the illusion of innovation. By dawn, I had downloaded and organized everything I could find. The numbers were staggering. More than $12 million had been siphoned from various departments. Inflated vendor contracts, payments for non-existent services, consulting fees routed through foreign intermediaries. A web of deceit, with Alpine Innovations sitting squarely in the middle. I made coffee and stepped out onto the back porch, watching the first pale gold light rise over the Ohio River. Patricia and I had bought this house for the view. Water settles your overthinking brain, she used to say. She was right. The river moved steadily, flowing forward, never back. It helped me think. At first, I considered going back to the board quietly, reaching out to them like a dutiful soldier. But this wasn't just about Travis or Zachary anymore. It went deeper. Some of the board had to know, which explained why they'd pushed Diana out so quickly and embraced Travis so eagerly. I needed to be smarter, more surgical. That morning, I began mapping connections between board members, shell companies, and past associates of Travis. By early afternoon, 3 names stood out. Elaine Morrison, a retired manufacturing executive, brought in to bring balance to the board. She'd come from a competitor and had no known ties to Travis. David Patel, representing the Workers' Pension Fund, sharp, detail-focused, and deeply respected by the union. And Anthony Wilson, the board's longest-serving member. Quiet, steady, and unlikely to be caught up in flashy schemes. 3 people who might still believe in what Meridian had once stood for. Then I found something I'd missed. Zachary Hughes, the financial prodigy brought in to replace me, had once been a founding partner at Vertex Solutions, one of the so-called vendors siphoning money through Alpine. His name had been scrubbed from recent records, but in the original incorporation documents filed 3 years ago, there it was plain as day. The entire scheme was tighter than I realized. This wasn't Travis and Zachary taking advantage of chaos. This was the plan all along. Just as I began organizing this new discovery, my phone rang. The number was blocked, but I answered anyway. "Is this Hunter Donnelly?" a woman asked. "Speaking. My name is Vanessa Taylor. I'm with the Securities and Exchange Commission Enforcement Division." My pulse jumped. We've received an anonymous tip about potential financial misconduct at Meridian Manufacturing, she continued, specifically involving its current leadership team. The information suggested you might have relevant insights. I paused, choosing my words carefully. I recently stepped down as CFO after 15 years with the company. Yes, we're aware, she said. Would you be willing to meet informally to discuss certain transactions from the last 6 months? Who else knows you're calling? No one outside my immediate team, she said. This is preliminary, not a formal investigation yet. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the darkened screen of my laptop. Going to the SEC would blow this wide open. It would be public. Fast. Meridian stock would nosedive. Headlines. Gangdang. Investigations. People like Bethany and Kevin would be caught in the fallout. Employees who had nothing to do with this might lose their jobs, their pensions, everything. But someone had already tipped them off. The clock was ticking now. The clock was ticking. I'll need some time, I said carefully. Time for what, Mr. Donnelly? To make sure I get this right. I gave myself 3 days. First priority, protect the evidence. I copied all my documentation, every file, every trace, to multiple secure cloud locations. I encrypted each one with rotating passkeys and built-in deadman switches. If I didn't log in and enter a code every 48 hours, the entire package would be sent automatically to the SEC, the Department of Justice, and 3 financial journalists I respected. People who would know what to do with it. Next came the outreach. I drafted 3 carefully worded emails to the board members I believed were still clean: Elaine Morrison, David Patel, and Anthony Wilson. I didn't name names or accuse anyone outright. Instead, I expressed concern about troubling financial patterns I'd noticed during my final weeks. I attached select pieces of evidence, just enough to raise real doubts without overwhelming them with noise. The emails were scheduled to send in 48 hours. The final and most delicate task involved someone I trusted. I reached out to Bethany and asked if she'd be willing to meet me for coffee. She agreed immediately. They're gutting our department, she told me the moment we sat down. Her voice was low, tight. Zachary says it's part of consolidating financial operations, but half of us got reassignment notices. The rest are being reviewed. She glanced down at her cup, blinking quickly. Including me. I let her breathe for a moment. 22 years at Meridian, and suddenly she was labeled redundant. I've got 6 weeks to find another role internally, she added. Or, I'm out. I gave her time, then said, Bethany, do you remember the audit protocol we implemented after the Jackson acquisition? The secondary verification channel. She frowned for a second, then nodded, her eyes widening. You mean the parallel audit trail? The one that automatically mirrors all transactions over $50,000 to the secure server? That's the one. Is it still active? As far as I know, it's hard-coded into the infrastructure. Zachary's team would need to know it exists in order to disable it. And who currently has access to that mirror? Senior audit staff, she said. And Zachary, I guess, since he's CFO now. What about archiving? I asked. Is the backup still sent to Iron Mountain on the 1st of every month? She thought for a moment, then nodded. Yes, that's automated too. The October backup should have been sent last week. Perfect. Even if Travis and Zachary realized what I was doing and tried to scrub the records, the originals were already sitting off-site, protected, time-stamped, and immutable. Bethany, I said gently, I'm going to ask something important. You are under no obligation. You can say no. I slid a sealed envelope across the table. And there is a formal report outlining financial concerns you, as a senior accounting manager, are obligated to report to internal audit. It only references information you would have had legitimate access to in your role. If you choose to submit it, they cannot retaliate against you without triggering whistleblower protections under federal law. Her hand shook slightly as she picked up the envelope. Is this why they're really pushing me out? Because I might have noticed. Probably, I said. But if you file that report, it creates an internal record that can't be ignored. It forces the audit team to look into the exact transactions I've already documented elsewhere. Bethany took a deep breath, straightened her posture, and tucked the envelope into her bag. When tomorrow morning would be best. On the way home, I made two final stops. First, at a notary public, where I signed and authenticated a sworn affidavit detailing everything I had discovered. Dates, figures, names, and corresponding documentation. Second, at my attorney's office. I left a sealed envelope marked to be opened only in the event of my death or incapacitation. Inside was a copy of the affidavit, along with credentials to access the encrypted evidence packages. That evening, my phone lit up with a text from Kevin. Z's asking lots of questions about old audit protocols. Seems nervous. Watch yourself. They were starting to realize their mistake. They'd been so focused on forcing me out, they hadn't stopped to think what I might have already seen or what I might have already saved. The wheels were turning. All I had to do now was wait. Exactly 6 weeks after I'd left Meridian, it all came apart at once. Internal audit, legal, HR, the board. Everything detonated. Bethany's formal complaint hit Zachary's desk the same morning my scheduled emails landed in the inboxes of Elaine, David, and Anthony. By noon, Elaine Morrison had used her authority as audit committee chair to call an emergency board meeting. I wasn't in the room, but Bethany kept me updated through quiet text throughout the day. 2 p.m., board meeting starting. Travis looks rattled. Z just got pulled into a side room with legal. 3:10. Internal auditors just arrived. Took over the main conference room. By early evening, the news broke inside Meridian. The company was under internal investigation for financial misconduct. Every executive who had joined under Travis's leadership was placed on administrative leave pending a full forensic audit. I turned off my phone and walked along the river, watching the Cincinnati skyline flicker to life as dusk settled. For the first time in months, I felt my shoulders ease. Not joy, not vindication, just release. The next morning, I saw 3 missed calls. William Foster, Travis Mercer, Jacob Foster. I ignored them all. Then another call came in from Anthony Wilson, the board's most senior member. 15 years of clean books, he said, his voice gravelly and slow. No scandals. No mistatements. No miss. I should have spoken up when they pushed you out. You're speaking up now, Anthony, I said. That's what matters. The board has asked me to serve as acting chairman until we clean this up. William and Jacob have resigned. 2 others followed. Travis and Zachary have been terminated for cause. I said nothing. We'd like you to come back, Hunter. Just temporarily. Help the forensic team make sense of everything and stabilize the company. I watched a barge move steadily down the Ohio, slow, deliberate, unbothered by the turbulence around it. I'll help with the investigation, I said, but I'm not coming back for good. May I ask why? Because, I said with a small smile, Meridian needs someone who can innovate, and I'm just a little too old school for that. 3 months later, I sat on the porch of my new cabin in Asheville, North Carolina, watching the sun drop behind the Blue Ridge Mountains. It wasn't large, 2 bedrooms and a small office, but it was quiet, it was mine, and the view made up for anything it lacked. The investigation into Meridian had confirmed everything I'd uncovered. The scheme was broader than even I had suspected, a coordinated effort to siphon money through false vendors, padded contracts, and empty consultant fees. Travis, Zachary, and several board members were now facing federal charges for embezzlement and securities fraud. I had stayed long enough to assist the forensic accounting team. 6 weeks of spreadsheets, timelines, and document trails. Then I packed up a Cincinnati house and left it behind. Patricia and I had always talked about retiring in the mountains. She would have loved this porch, this view, this quiet. Meridian's settlement for my consulting time had been more than fair. It paid for the cabin outright and left me with more than enough to live simply and well. I'd made one condition: no press appearances, no interviews, no victory laps. That had never been my style. My phone buzzed. A message from Bethany. Got the promotion. Director of Accounting. New CEO wants to rebuild everything, this time with a clean slate. I smiled and tapped back. Well deserved. And never forget the parallel audit trail. The day before, my lawyer called. The SEC had closed its case against Meridian after the company agreed to broad governance reforms and paid financial penalties. Importantly, none of the costs fell on shareholders or everyday employees. That was the right outcome. As twilight spread across the hills, I opened the leather portfolio Patricia had given me long ago. Inside was a faded photo of us at the lake house, the last summer before her diagnosis. "You were right," I said softly to her smiling face. "I should have made more time for views like this." Tomorrow, I drive into town to meet with the director of a local nonprofit. They needed help organizing their books. Just good, honest accounting for people doing work that mattered. Nothing flashy. Some might call that old school. I just called it integrity. Moving on to the next story.
"You've been getting home late again." Her voice had that sharp, polished edge, not quite accusation, not quite concern. "My name is Jordan Winters, 52 years old, and owner of Ironwood Forge, a heavy equipment contracting firm I built from sweat, rust, and 18-hour days in Spokane, Washington. 15 years married to Cheryl. 15 years best friends with Wayne. 15 years thinking I understood what loyalty meant." That night, I stood in our kitchen, still in my steel-toed boots, dried concrete dust flaking off my sleeves. The weight of the day settled on my shoulders like it always did, familiar, expected. The kitchen clock glowed 9:30 p.m. late, yes, but not unusual. Not for a man trying to lock down the Patterson contract, a deal that would double our revenue and take Ironwood into a whole new league. "Big project," I muttered, scrubbing black grease from under my fingernails at the sink. "You know how these bids are." Cheryl gave a tight nod, lips pressed into a line. She'd been different lately, edgy, distracted, always half-present. Her phone never left her side anymore. Always screen down on the counter. Always locked. She used to ask about my day, actually cared about the little wins and the setbacks. Now, it was just the dull scrape of a fork on her reheated dinner plate, silence pressing between us like a closed door. "Wayne called," she said casually. Too casually. "Wants to know if we're still on for the barbecue this weekend." I dried my hands slower than I needed to. Wayne Hoffman. My best friend since our 20s. Godfather to our son. The man who showed up when my dad died, who helped haul scrap off our first yard when the bank threatened foreclosure, who sat outside the hospital after Cheryl miscarried our second child. He was family. At least I thought so. "Sure," I said after a beat. "Tell him I'll bring the steaks." She smiled. One of those small, polite ones that didn't touch her eyes. Then her phone buzzed. She turned it over to read a message, and the smile changed, softer, almost private. She caught my gaze. "Just Jennifer from book club," she offered, though I hadn't asked. I gave a slight nod and headed toward the bathroom. The knot in my gut twisted tighter. That same knot I'd felt when Thompson Construction tried to undercut our last bid with imported equipment from Alberta. The same feeling I got when a bank manager called me, "son," while turning down our expansion loan. That quiet alarm in my chest that whispered, "Something's off, pay attention." In the shower, hot water pounding across my back, I started piecing it together. Wayne's new truck. Cheryl's sudden interest in Thursday night book clubs. The way they both seemed to check their phones at the exact same time during dinner. I'd ignored it for weeks. Maybe months. But ignoring rot doesn't stop it from spreading. I met Wayne Hoffman back in 2010 on a job site just outside Spokane. He was site manager. I was subcontracting the equipment haul. Over lunch, we bonded over vintage Harleys and bad coffee. By the end of the month, we were riding together every weekend, wrenching on bikes, burning highways. When I founded Ironwood Forge 3 years later, Wayne was the first call I made. He put in $30,000, most of his savings, for a 15% stake. Never questioned my judgment, even when we were struggling to make payroll that first winter. Cheryl and I had already been married 7 years by then. She was with me when I was still running backhoes for an hourly wage. When we lived in that crumbling one-bedroom with the moldy ceiling and no insulation. She believed in ironwood before anyone else did, even when her parents warned her I was a man with dirt under his nails and no future. We built our life the hard way. Together. A home. A business. A son, Thomas, now off at college studying engineering. Her parents came around eventually. At our 25th anniversary party, her dad finally told me I'd done all right, while sipping wine on the deck of the lake house they once said I'd never afford. Wayne had been there for it all. My best man. My emergency contact. The guy pacing the hospital hallway the night Thomas was born. It was always the three of us, me, Cheryl, and Wayne. A triangle I thought was unbreakable. But something changed last year. And the first real crack? That showed up at Christmas. Wayne's wife, Diane, had left him the year before. Said she needed space, needed to find herself. He'd spent Christmas with us, just like family. That's how it had always been. I remember how Cheryl laughed at one of his dumb jokes and touched his arm. Too familiar, too casual. How their eyes lingered just a second too long when they thought I wasn't watching. I told myself it was nothing. Wayne had been my best friend for over 15 years. You don't nuke a friendship like that over a hunch. You give the people closest to you the benefit of the doubt. But then came the odd little things. The missed calls on Cheryl's phone from Jennifer, always at weird hours. A new perfume she suddenly started wearing to book club. The way she'd jerk upright, guilty, when I walked in and caught her texting. And Wayne, he started showing up at the house when I wasn't there. Said he was helping Cheryl fix a leaky faucet. Dropped off invoices and blueprints he could have easily emailed. I said nothing. Just kept my head down and worked longer hours, chasing growth, trying to build something for us, for the life we had earned. Every man's got blind spots, especially when it comes to the people he trusts the most. Mine weren't blind. They were staring right back at me. And I still chose not to see them, until I couldn't avoid it anymore. It all unraveled on a Tuesday night in April. I'd wrapped early at the Patterson site, the same contract I'd been chasing for months. We finally got it. A win that was supposed to be shared. I felt good for the first time in weeks and thought maybe, just maybe, we could still turn things around. I stopped by the wine shop, picked up her favorite bottle. Something smooth. Thought we'd reconnect over dinner. Laugh like we used to. The house was quiet when I walked in. Too quiet for 7 p.m. Cheryl's car was in the driveway, but she wasn't in the kitchen or living room. No music, no TV. I set the wine on the counter. That's when I saw her phone, sitting by the sink, screen still glowing. I'd never once snooped through my wife's phone. Never needed to. But something about that moment, how quiet the house was, the tension I'd ignored for too long, made my hand move before I could talk myself out of it. The text lit up the screen. Wayne. Left my jacket upstairs. Don't tell Jordan I stopped by. I didn't freeze. I didn't shout. I just felt a slow, heavy certainty settle over me, like when the final bolt clicks into place, and the whole frame gives way. I took the stairs one at a time. Quiet. Controlled. The master bedroom door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. Cheryl sat on the edge of our bed, holding Wayne's leather jacket. The one I gave him for his 50th. She looked up. Saw me standing there. Color drained from her face in slow motion. Jordan, she whispered. Just my name. Nothing else. I held up her phone. The screen still lit. He left his jacket. She didn't lie. Didn't stammer out a story about helping him file taxes or planning a surprise party. She just sat there, frozen, shoulders curved inward like she'd already collapsed in on herself. Still holding his jacket like it meant something. You're always working late, she finally said. Her eyes never met mine. He was there for me. I nodded. Calmly. It wasn't rage anymore, it was something colder, steadier. I get it, I said. I just need time to think. I turned around and walked out. Down the stairs. Grabbed my keys off the hook by the door. I drove to the Ironwood Forge office. The lot was empty. Inside, I sat down at my desk in the dark. Didn't even turn on the lights. Just sat there. It wasn't just Cheryl. It was Wayne. My best friend. The guy who helped build every part of this life. Now clawing at the part one thought was most untouchable. I reached into the bottom drawer and pulled out the bottle of good whiskey, same one we opened that morning when we signed the Patterson deal. I poured 2 fingers into a glass, the way we always did. Didn't drink it. Just stared at it as the amber caught the glow of the street lamp outside the window. By midnight, the whiskey was still untouched. But something inside me had shifted. Hardened. The hurt was there. Tight in my chest like a steel band, but it was already being sealed off. Compartmentalized. I'd spent my life building things. Machines. Crews. A business. A marriage. But now, I was going to dismantle something. Piece by careful piece. I pulled out my phone and dialed my lawyer's private line. Cheryl got space, for exactly 3 days. I slept in the guest room, didn't ask where she went during the day or who was on the other end of her late-night texts. I was polite. Distant. Doing what any shocked husband would be doing, processing. That's what she saw. What she didn't see was what happened between 9 and 5. The morning after I found Wayne's jacket, I walked into Harold Kessler's downtown office. He was the same guy who'd helped draft the founding documents for Ironwood Forge 15 years ago. We sat in his corner office, blinds drawn halfway against the spring light, the city moving below us. "You want to trigger Article 7? He asked, eyebrow raised. "That's right. Not a question," he said. "Article 7, my insurance policy. Built into our original partnership papers. Harold had insisted we include it, just in case. A clause that gave me the right to buy out Wayne's stake if he did anything that put the company's reputation at risk. Back then, I figured we were talking gambling, a bar fight, maybe a DUI. Not this. It'll mean buying him out at the penalty rate," Harold warned. 20 cents on the dollar, based on current valuation. I nodded. "I know. You have proof?" I slid my phone across the desk. The text I'd pulled off Cheryl's phone while she slept. Screenshots. GPS records of Wayne's truck parked in our driveway during work hours. Emails I dug up from her laptop, messages that left nothing to the imagination. Harold swiped through them silently, his expression unreadable, but his silence said plenty. "This won't be clean," he said finally. "It's already messy." 2 days later, the papers were ready. I called Wayne and asked him to meet me after hours at the office. Told him we needed to run through some updates on the Patterson expansion. He walked in like it was any other day, flannel shirt, worn jeans, that same leather jacket I'd given him for his birthday. "Hey, buddy," he said, dropping into the chair across from me. "What's so urgent it couldn't wait till morning?" I didn't answer. Just slid the folder across the table. He opened it, skimmed the first few pages, then flipped back to the cover. "Article 7? He said slowly. "You're buying me out?" I nodded once. Confusion shifted to anger as he scanned the clause. "What the hell is this, Jordan?" "Article 7, I repeated. "Detrimental actions to the company's image." His eyes narrowed. "Is this about Cheryl?" I kept my voice steady. "You know exactly what this is about." He leaned in, lowering his voice like we were co-conspirators. "Look, I know things between you two haven't been great. She's been lonely. Man, it just happened. 15 years of friendship, and that's your explanation? It just happened." He looked away, ran a hand through his hair. "You've been absent, Jordan. Always working. Always chasing the next deal. When was the last time you actually looked at her? Listened?" His tone shifted, like he was the victim. "You left a space, and I filled it." I almost laughed. "So it's my fault?" I'm not signing this, he snapped, pushing the folder back across the desk. You can't force me out over something personal. Actually, I can. I tapped the clause. Section 3. Paragraph 2. You signed it. He glanced down, rereading the words he'd once barely skimmed. I saw his jaw tighten. You're doing this? After everything we built together? You did this to us, I said quietly. I'm just following the contract. Wayne stood, knocking the chair back. Cheryl won't stand for this. She'll back me. I shrugged. You should give her a call. He pulled out his phone, stabbing at the screen with angry fingers as he stormed out the door. I didn't chase him. Just leaned back in my chair, watching the last of the daylight stretch across the concrete floor. Waiting for the next domino. The next morning, I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard the front door slam open. Wayne was back. Wayne barged through the front door like he still had some claim to the place. Maybe in his mind he did. He looked wild, shirt wrinkled, jaw clenched, eyes already halfway to bloodshot. What did you say to her? He barked, stepping into the kitchen like he belonged there. I didn't rush. I calmly poured my coffee into a thick ceramic mug, letting the aroma fill the silence. Who? Cheryl? She's not answering my calls, he snapped. Her sister said she left town yesterday. That was news to me. I'd intentionally kept my distance. Gave Cheryl space, let her make her own choices. I hadn't tracked her, hadn't monitored her movements. But I didn't flinch. I took a slow sip, keeping my expression unreadable. Maybe she needed time to think, I said. Wayne slammed his palm down on the counter, hard enough to rattle the mug. Don't play this game with me, Jordan. You threatened her, didn't you? You made her choose between me and your damn money. I set the mug down, gently. No theatrics. I didn't have to threaten anyone, Wayne. I showed her the same thing I showed you, the papers to dissolve our partnership. And then, I added, stepping a little closer, I showed her something else. He tilted his head, uncertain. Our prenup. Wayne blinked. Your what? Our prenuptial agreement, I said evenly. The one Cheryl and I signed when we got married. Her parents insisted on it to protect their assets. I agreed, but added a clause of my own. Infidelity nullifies any claim to shared property acquired during the marriage, including business shares. His mouth fell slightly open. You're bluffing. I walked over to my home office and opened the filing cabinet's bottom drawer. Pulled out a slim, weathered folder. Inside, original signatures. The prenup. The amendment with the infidelity clause. All legally binding. I placed it on the kitchen counter and opened it for him to see. Wayne leaned over, scanning the pages. His face shifted from confusion to disbelief to something like awe. You've been planning this, all along? No, I said quietly. I've been protecting what's mine. There's a difference. He sank into the nearest chair, the weight of it all finally catching up to him. So that's it. You strip us both of everything? Not everything, I said. Just what you tried to steal. But I wasn't done. While Wayne had been too busy betraying every ounce of loyalty we'd built over 15 years, I'd been going through the books at Ironwood Forge. Digging deeper than he knew. And what I found made the affair look like the least of it. There's more, I said, pulling out a second folder. An audit. He straightened in his chair, sensing the shift in tone. I laid it out in front of him. Audit of your expense accounts. The past 3 years. He didn't touch the papers. Just stared at them, hands curled into fists. Jordan, that's not what it looks like. Then tell me what it is. Because to my accountant, it looks exactly like embezzlement. Jesus, he whispered. $173,000. Ghost rentals. Inflated vendor invoices. Personal travel billed as logistics. I was going to put it back, he muttered, staring down. With what? I asked. Your bank account's empty. Your divorce from Diane cleared you out. You used company money for the down payment on that house. To keep up appearances. To impress. I let the sentence hang. He couldn't meet my eyes. What do you want? He finally asked, voice hoarse. I closed the folder. You sign the dissolution papers. Today. And this audit disappears. Or you fight me, and I hand this over to the district attorney. Wayne stared at me, broken in a way I hadn't seen before. You thought of everything. No, I said. I never thought I'd have to. Their project was mine to protect. I assured them, face to face, that the restructuring inside Ironwood Forge wouldn't touch their deadlines or the quality of our work. Old man Patterson, grizzled and blunt as ever, clapped me on the shoulder and said, We always knew we were hiring you, Jordan. Not just some company logo. While Wayne was still taping up boxes in his office, I was across town shaking hands with 3 of our biggest clients, personally walking them through the changes, and getting them to sign new contracts, with me, not the company. By the time Wayne carried out his framed photos and the coffee mug with our old logo on it, I had secured over 80% of our yearly revenue through updated agreements that tied their business directly to me. A week later, Cheryl came back. I was in the backyard splitting firewood when her car pulled into the driveway. She got out slowly, her expression cautious, almost wary, like she was stepping into a house that didn't feel familiar anymore. Maybe it wasn't. We need to talk, she said as she approached. I set the axe down, wiping sweat from my brow. About us, she added after a pause. About what happens next. Her tone was calm, practiced. I could tell she'd been rehearsing this speech, probably for days. I've already filed the divorce papers, I said, cutting through it. Your copy's on the kitchen counter. She blinked, like she hadn't expected me to be 2 steps ahead. Just like that? She said, thrown off. 15 years, and you're just walking away? No fight? No discussion? It almost made me laugh. Almost. You made that decision a long time ago, I replied. I'm just finishing what you started. She looked down at the grass. People make mistakes, Jordan. Marriages come back from worse. People forgive. I lifted another log and lined it up. This wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. One you made again and again. I brought the axe down clean through the wood. The crack echoed through the quiet yard. What about the house? She asked, shifting gears. And your retirement accounts? I talked to my lawyer. He says I'm entitled to half. I laid the axe aside again, turned to face her. Your lawyer should take another look at the prenup. Pay special attention to the infidelity clause. Her face paled. That old thing? We signed that 20 years ago. That can't possibly still hold up. It does, I said. And it will. But I'm not leaving you with nothing. You'll keep the vacation cabin and a modest settlement. Enough to start over. Not enough to split with Wayne. She flinched at his name. What does Wayne have to do with this divorce? Nothing, I said. Not anymore. He's been bought out. And the money he embezzled? It's being reclaimed through the sale of his shares. She sat down on the bench near the garden, her breath catching. Embezzled? She asked quietly. What are you talking about? And in that moment I saw it, she didn't know. All this time, she hadn't realized Wayne had been stealing just to afford the life that impressed her. The dinners. The gifts. The long weekends. He'd been using the company to fund their fantasy. Ask him yourself, I said, picking up the axe again. Though I doubt he'll take your calls now. He lost his golden goose. She looked at me like I was someone she didn't recognize. And maybe I was. The man who would have moved mountains for her. Who would have forgiven everything just to hold on to the life we built. That version of me died the night I found Wayne's jacket in our bedroom. Who are you? She whispered. I split another log. Someone done carrying people who were planning to drop me. 6 weeks after that night, I sat at a long, polished table inside Drift Shade Limited, Eastern Washington's second-largest construction firm. Across from me sat Arthur Bowman, their no-nonsense CEO, and his lead counsel. Between us sat a thick stack of acquisition papers, Ironwood's fate, bound and paginated. "One last chance to back out," Arthur said, folding his hands. "Once you sign, there's no reversing it." I reached for the pen and met his eyes. "I'm not the one who'll be having regrets." This wasn't about bitterness. It wasn't even about revenge anymore. This was about legacy. About starting fresh, but with everything I had earned intact. 2 weeks after I forced Wayne out, this opportunity had landed in my lap. And I had every intention of making sure Ironwood's name, my name, meant something again. A call from Arthur changed everything. Drift Shade had been trying to grow their heavy equipment division for years, and with the Patterson contract locked in and Ironwood's reputation cleaner than ever, the timing couldn't have been better. I could have walked away, could have doubled down on rebuilding the company myself. But every time I stepped into that office, every time I passed Wayne's old desk or saw Cheryl's handwriting on a sticky note, it reminded me of what I'd lost. I didn't need a renovation. I needed a reset. So I made the deal. Drift Shade would acquire Ironwood Forge for double its appraised value, with one condition. I'd stay on for 2 years as division president, bringing over my clients, my crews, and my knowledge. After that, I'd be free. Retire, start something new, disappear, whatever I wanted. I signed the final page of the contract and slid it back across the table. Arthur's secretary knocked lightly on the door. "Mr. Bowman, there's someone here to see Mr. Winters." "A Mr. Hoffman." Arthur looked at me. I nodded. Wayne stepped in, his jaw tight, eyes flashing. "You sold the company?" he snapped. "Didn't even offer me a chance to buy back in?" I turned to Arthur, extended my hand. "Thank you for your time. I look forward to what we'll build together." The Drift Shade execs began filing out, giving Wayne a wide berth. Once the room was clear, I faced him fully. "You're right," I said. "I sold it. $17 million. He blinked like I'd slapped him. 17? I nodded slowly. "Your shares were worth around 600,000 when you sold them back to me. I paid you 120. His mouth opened. "You, son of a, I'd choose your next words carefully," I said quietly. "You're already on thin ice, Wayne." He balled his fists. "This isn't over. Actually," I said, tucking the contract into my briefcase, "it is." 1 year later, I stood on the deck of my new place overlooking the Columbia River. Not the old vacation house Cheryl got in the divorce. This one was all mine. Bigger. Quieter. A private workshop out back where I spent mornings restoring a 1967 Harley I'd been chasing since I was 19. The divorce had been final for 9 months. Cheryl didn't contest the thing after her lawyer reviewed the prenup. She'd taken the offer I'd extended from the start. Reasonable, not generous. Word around town was she and Wayne gave their relationship a try. It lasted a couple of months, just long enough for reality to sink in. Wayne couldn't keep up with the lifestyle she was used to. Not after losing his cut of Ironwood. Not after every whisper in our industry had his name tied to shady books and backroom deals. Cheryl moved to Seattle. Trying, I heard, to start over. Wayne didn't land as well. After our last run-in, he tried starting a rental business of his own. Called the same clients we'd built together, but no one bit. They'd heard the stories about his exit, the audit, the embezzlement, and no one wanted that risk. Last I heard, he was working a salaried job with a mid-sized outfit in Idaho. From co-owner to mid-level manager in under a year. A steep fall for a man who once signed contracts with the Silver Mont Blanc and handed out cigars at client dinners. I took a sip of my coffee, watching an osprey circle lazily above the river. My phone buzzed, a text from Thomas. "Coming home this weekend. Dinner?" I smiled. "Always free for you." At 53, This wasn't the life I thought I'd be living. The marriage was gone. The best friend I trusted more than blood was a stranger. The company I built was under a different flag. But I still ran the show. I had my son. My integrity. And $17 million invested in places where no one could touch it. I'd lost illusions. But I'd kept the truth. Some men spend their whole lives learning who they can trust. I learned it in one sharp, brutal season. Costly? Yes. But worth every penny.
Moving on to the next story. Your methods are too traditional for our new direction, she said during my termination. We need digital-first leadership. My name is Ryan Walsh. For 15 years, I led the Midwest sales division of Oaklight Publishing, based in Indianapolis. I built that team from the ground up, turning a floundering region into the company's top revenue generator. I didn't rely on dashboards or automation, just relationships, handshakes, and an instinct for knowing which publishers needed what, when. By last year, my division was bringing in 60% of the entire company's revenue. Not that anyone at the executive level seemed to care, until those quarterly reports landed on their desks. When Veronica Bennett took over as CEO 6 months ago, she brought with her PowerPoint decks and consultants in $5,000 suits. Every meeting suddenly became about digital transformation and disrupting the publishing model. She'd never worked in publishing before, came from some startup in San Francisco. But the board loved her energy and her so-called vision. I kept my head down and kept delivering, but I could feel it, her eyes on me during leadership meetings. I was the oldest director in the room, the only one who still kept a paper calendar and met clients face-to-face instead of over Zoom. The meeting invite came on a Monday. Her assistant, Jason, looked uncomfortable when he showed up in my office. "She'd like to see you at 2. Executive boardroom." I nodded and returned to my call with Franklin Press, our biggest client. We were finalizing a 5-year renewal worth $12 million. The kind of deal that only happened because I'd had dinner with Thomas Franklin every quarter for a decade. The boardroom had changed since Veronica arrived. Glass walls, modern furniture, and a massive screen where the old oak table used to sit. She was already there with Jason and someone from HR I didn't recognize. I knew what was coming. "Ryan, thank you for everything you've done for Oaklight," she began, hands folded, eyes steady. "But we're moving in a different direction." I listened quietly as she explained how my approach didn't align with their digital-first model, how they needed someone with a fresher outlook, someone younger, though she never said that part out loud. I thanked her, shook her hand, walked out without a scene. 15 years ended in 15 minutes. What she didn't understand, what the board didn't get, was that in publishing, especially with the legacy houses that made up 80% of our revenue, trust isn't built with email campaigns or data models. It's earned with consistency, FaceTime, and showing up when it matters. I cleaned out my office while the team was at lunch. No big farewell, no speech, just quiet closure. When I got to my car, I sat there a long time. 3 missed calls from Thomas Franklin. Word had already spread. I started at Oaklight back when it was still called Midwestern Literary Partners. We were just 20 employees and a handful of clients then. I'd left a corner office and 6-figure salary at Heritage Books after it got swallowed by a corporate giant. I couldn't stand what big publishing was doing to the industry. Robert Oaklight hired me personally. "We don't need someone to crunch numbers," he told me. "We need someone who remembers books are made by people who care about what's between the covers." For the first 5 years, I rebuilt that territory one relationship at a time. Drove 70,000 miles in a single year, visiting every indie publisher between Ohio and Nebraska. I knew their spouses' names, their kids. I went to their weddings, their funerals, their retirements. Not for strategy, because that's how we did things. By the time Robert retired and his son William took over, we'd grown 400%. William understood the business, even if he cared more about margins than his father had. But he trusted me. Let me do my job. 3 years ago, when the board started whispering about modernization and external leadership, William fought them. But then cancer took him at 58, and with him went the last person who defended the way we used to work. The cracks began showing before they even noticed. Veronica was barely settled in before the boardroom buzzword started. Every meeting I wasn't in seemed to include the word antiquated. Questions floated around about why my team hadn't leveraged social media better or implemented CRM optimization. Jacob, my assistant director, the one I'd been grooming to take over someday, started getting invited to strategy sessions I wasn't even told about. He'd come back from those meetings with an uneasy look, clearly uncomfortable being used as a messenger. They're talking about restructuring, he told me 6 months ago. A separate digital sales team that won't report through your division. I should have seen the writing on the wall then. Should have taken it seriously when they hired 3 digital engagement specialists and parked them under my org without a word. Or when they reassigned some of my legacy clients to those new hires without any explanation. Thomas Franklin had called me directly when they pulled his account. Some kid called today, he said, told me he was my new account manager. Said they're streamlining the customer interface or whatever that means. What's going on over there, Ryan? Just some reorganization, I told him, trying to sound steady. Nothing to worry about. But I was worried. I just didn't know how to fight a battle where the weapons being used weren't even visible to me. The day after I was let go, I sat in my home office, staring at my phone. 17 missed calls, 32 texts, 6 emails marked urgent. All from clients, partners, and industry contacts who had already heard. I hadn't told anyone yet, not even Catherine, who was visiting our daughter in Columbus. I needed to sit with it alone first. The call that finally made me pick up came from Thomas Franklin. What the hell happened? He asked, no greeting, just fire. They're going in a new direction, I replied, repeating the line I'd been given. Thomas swore. You are that company to most of us. Do they not get that? I didn't respond. I met that new guy yesterday. Drew something. Spent 40 minutes walking me through dashboards and metrics. Not once did he ask about our historical fiction imprint, the one I told you could make or break our whole year. I closed my eyes, exhausted in a way that sleep wouldn't fix. They'll figure it out, Thomas. No, he said flatly, they won't. People like that never bother to learn what matters. They just push a system and expect everyone to adapt. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and looked at the severance email from Oaklight HR. 6 months pay, 90 days of health insurance, and a non-disparagement clause. The kicker? A non-compete that blocked me from working with any of our clients for a full year. I almost laughed out loud. They thought a single document could erase relationships I'd built over decades. The phone buzzed again. Elena Jenkins from Riverstone Press. Another major client. Another friend I'd worked with for years. I heard what happened, she said when I answered. It's their loss. When you're ready to talk about what's next, call me. By the end of the day, I'd heard from 12 major clients. Combined, they represented more than 40% of Oaklight's annual revenue. They weren't calling to say goodbye. They were waiting to see where I'd land. I sat in the backyard as the sun dipped low, bourbon in hand, and turned over a thought that had started small but kept growing stronger with every message and call. They let me go because I didn't fit their slick digital vision. Because I built connections instead of dashboards. Because my client notes were handwritten instead of logged in Salesforce. But what if those outdated methods were exactly what my clients valued? What if what Veronica Bennett dismissed as a weakness was actually my greatest strength? I picked up my phone and dialed my attorney. Ben, it's Ryan. I need you to look at something for me. A non compete clause. They let you go? He asked, surprised. They did. And I think it might be the best thing that's ever happened to me. I wasn't chasing revenge. I just wanted to keep doing what I'd always done, helping publishers connect with the right people. And if Oaklight Publishing didn't want that anymore, maybe someone else would. Maybe I'd build it myself. Light didn't value the kind of service anymore, but plenty of others still did. That night, for the first time since the termination meeting, I slept through without waking once. 2 weeks later, I met Benjamin at his downtown office. He'd gone through the non-compete clause with a fine-tooth comb and had news I hadn't expected. It's essentially unenforceable, he said, sliding the document across his desk. They overreached. The scope is too broad, the duration too long, And most importantly, they can't stop you from using your general knowledge in the same field. So if I could start my own consulting firm? I asked. You could, Benjamin nodded. But there's a catch. They'll still sue you if you make a move. Even if they lose, they'll drag it out. Expensive. Messy. I considered that. Oaklight had resources, and I knew they'd use them to box out anyone they saw as a threat. What if I don't approach any clients? I asked. What if I just become available? Benjamin smiled. That's a different story entirely. The next day, I filed paperwork for Walsh Publishing Consultants. No website, no announcement, no cold calls, just a legitimate legal entity that could accept payment and offer services. That was enough. 3 days later, Thomas Franklin called. I hear you set up shop, he said without preamble. News travels fast, I replied. In this business? Like wildfire. Listen, I need help with our winter catalog strategy. Oaklight's new team is pushing academic markets, but I think we should double down on historical fiction. I need someone who knows the numbers and the audience. I'm still figuring things out, Thomas. 15 grand. 2 months of guidance. No overlap with Oaklight services. Just you helping us think clearly. It was a generous offer. Careful, too. Crafted to avoid legal fire. But I still paused. I need to think about it. Don't take too long, Thomas warned. We're finalizing next week. Not long after, my phone rang again. Jacob, my former assistant director. Can we meet? He asked quietly. Not at the office. Somewhere out of the way. We met at a small cafe near Eagle Creek Park, far from downtown. Jacob looked nervous, eyes flicking toward the windows every few seconds. It's bad, he said once we settled in. They promoted me into your role, but I'm not making any decisions. The new digital team runs everything. I figured, I said. No, you don't get it. They're tearing down everything you built. All your major accounts? Reassigned. They're pushing this mandatory CRM system that none of the veteran reps can figure out. 3 people have quit already. I took a sip of my coffee, keeping my face neutral. And the clients? Jacob glanced around and leaned in closer. They're pissed. Riverstone's threatening to leave. Thomas Franklin hasn't taken a call in over a week. The quarterly numbers are tanking. And Veronica? She's blaming the transition. Says it's all expected turbulence. He hesitated. But there's more. They're watching you. Legal had a meeting yesterday. They're scared you're going to start poaching. Now his anxiety made sense. He was putting himself at risk to warn me. Thanks, Jacob. I mean it. He nodded and slid an envelope across the table. Client contact list. Personal emails. Cell numbers. He stood. I didn't give you this. And we never had this conversation. He walked out. I sat there for a long time, the envelope in my hands. Inside was everything they feared I'd use, and exactly what they expected me to. If I opened it, they'd have the perfect excuse to come after me. Maybe even Jacob. They'd laid the trap, which meant I needed to take a different path altogether. I stood up, left the envelope sitting on the table, and walked away. A month passed. I hadn't contacted any Oakenlight clients, despite daily calls from publishers asking for guidance. I deflected each one politely, citing professional boundaries. The non-compete might not hold up in court, but I wasn't ready to gamble with it just yet. Instead, I focused on other corners of the industry, contacts outside Oakenlight's portfolio. Small independents, university presses, literary agents needing market insight. Work that kept me sharp, legal, and connected to the business I loved. Then came the invitation I hadn't expected. Harold Blackwood, chairman of Oakenlight's board, requested a private meeting. Not at the office, at his club downtown. I accepted, mostly out of curiosity. The Indianapolis Gentlemen's Association was all dark oak, hushed conversations, and legacy. Harold, 70 and silver-haired, waited in a private room with 2 glasses of scotch already poured. Thank you for coming, Ryan, he said, gesturing to the seat across from him. I imagine you're wondering why I wanted this meeting. The thought crossed my mind, I replied. He pushed 1 glass toward me. Things at Oakenlight aren't going as expected. I took a small sip, but stayed silent. Revenue is down 38% this quarter, Harold continued. Client retention has hit an all-time low. The digital initiative that was meant to reinvent us has alienated our foundation instead. That's unfortunate, I said evenly. Harold studied me. You don't seem surprised. Publishing is a relationship business. Always has been. So I'm learning, he murmured, leaning forward slightly. The board is increasingly concerned about Veronica's leadership. Her methods might work in Silicon Valley, but publishing's a different beast. Why are you telling me this? Because we'd like you to come back. He paused. As Chief Revenue Officer, you'd be reporting above Veronica. I stared at him. What about Jacob? Jacob's a good man, Harold said, but he doesn't have your relationships or experience. And Veronica? She'd accept that structure. Harold's face hardened. She wouldn't have a choice. The pieces began falling into place. This wasn't about one bad quarter. It had been brewing. This has been building for a while, I said. Harold exhaled, the polished mask slipping. Veronica was William's choice, his final big move before the cancer got worse. The board had concerns, but we deferred to him out of respect. After he passed, we gave her space. She's lost our confidence. And my termination, not board approved. We found out after the fact. Same with several other internal changes. I leaned back, seeing it now. Veronica wasn't trying to modernize. She was clearing out William's people and surrounding herself with loyalists. My firing wasn't strategic, it was political. The offer is substantial, Harold continued. Double your previous salary. Full control of client relationships and the team. And the board's support to rebuild. It was everything I should have wanted: validation, power, security. I need time to think, I said finally. Of course, but don't wait too long. We're unraveling quickly. On the drive home, the conversation looped in my mind. The board hadn't just realized their mistake. They'd known all along, but stayed quiet until the losses began piling up. Now they wanted me back. But there was something else Harold hadn't said, something I still understood clearly. They wanted me to do their cleanup. To return, gut Veronica's initiatives, and eventually, Veronica herself. They didn't want Ryan Walsh the builder. They wanted Ryan the hammer. And I wasn't angry. I was clear. I declined Harold's offer the next morning. A short, polite email. His reply landed minutes later. A counteroffer. Increased the compensation package further. I didn't reply. Instead, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to Thomas Franklin. I'm ready to discuss that consulting arrangement, I told him. But I'd like to suggest a different approach. I'm listening, he said. I won't consult exclusively for Franklin Press. Instead, I'm forming a collective, a consortium of independent publishers who share resources, distribution networks, and market intelligence. No long-term contracts, no corporate red tape. Just publishers helping publishers, with me connecting the dots. There was a pause on the line. How many others have you pitched this to? None yet. You're the first call. Because I was your biggest client? Because I trust your judgment, I said. If you think it works, I'll pursue it. If not, I'll stick to traditional consulting. Thomas didn't hesitate. I'm in, and I know at least 5 others who will be too. My second call was to Eleanor Jenkins at Riverstone Press. As expected, she loved the idea, then took it further. She proposed a shared digital infrastructure that would let small publishers scale without giving up their independence. The third call was to Benjamin, my attorney. I walked him through the concept. You're not poaching their clients, he confirmed. You're creating a new entity. If their clients choose to join, that's on them. It's legally solid. Within 2 weeks, Walsh Publishing Consortium had 7 founding members, former Oakenlight clients, all either already gone or counting down their exit dates. Each chipped into fund operations, including my salary and core infrastructure. But this wasn't just about building a competitor. It was about building something Oakenlight couldn't copy, a cooperative model where independence met collaboration. No one called me CEO. I didn't want a title. I was simply the facilitator, the one who understood what each member needed and how to bridge those gaps. We opened a modest office in Broad Ripple, well away from the downtown towers where Oakenlight and the others camped out. I hired 2 people, a recent college grad to manage communications and a retired ops veteran who wasn't quite ready to hang it up. The publishing world talks fast. Within a month, 3 more publishers joined. By the second, we'd outgrown our office, and I never once reached out to an Oaken Light client. I didn't need to. They came on their own, drawn by word of mouth and frustrated with the new digital-first model that ignored the soul of publishing: relationships. Jacob called one evening in late September, 2 months in. "They know what you're doing," he said. "Veronica's furious. She's hinting at legal action." "We haven't violated anything," I replied calmly. "That won't stop her from trying." He hesitated. "There's a board meeting tomorrow. Q3 results. It's going to be ugly." "That's not my concern anymore, Jacob." "I know, but I thought you should know. And I wanted to ask, would you have space for one more? I've hit my limit." I smiled. This wasn't revenge. It was recognition. I understood the business in a way Veronica never could. "Come by tomorrow," I said. "We'll talk." October's earnings call told the story in numbers. Oaken Light reported a 45% revenue decline year over year. Their stock dropped 17% in a single day. I didn't listen to the call myself. I was in a strategy meeting with 15 consortium members. We were finalizing our collective approach for the upcoming industry conference in Chicago. Thomas texted me the highlights from Oaken Light's earnings call. Veronica blaming market shifts and transitional turbulence. No mention, of course, that their top clients had walked away. Later that afternoon, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Ryan Walsh?" a woman asked. "Speaking. This is Patricia Harrington from the Oaken Light Board of Directors," she said crisply. "I'm calling to inform you that we've voted to waive your non-compete agreement effective immediately. We've also authorized our legal team to prepare a cease and desist regarding what we consider interference with our client relationships." I let the silence hang. "Do you have any response, Mr. Walsh?" "Just one question," I said. "Have you actually spoken to your clients?" "Not through account managers or metrics. Sat down with Thomas Franklin or Eleanor Jenkins and asked them why they left." "That's not relevant to." "It's the only thing that's relevant," I interrupted. "They didn't leave because I built something new. They left because Oaken Light stopped caring about what mattered to them." "The board meeting is still in session," she replied after a beat. "Perhaps you'd care to join us and explain your perspective directly?" "I appreciate the invite," I said, "but I'm in the middle of my own meeting with 15 publishers who've chosen a different path." She went quiet, long enough that I thought the call had dropped. "I see," she said finally, and hung up. The cease and desist never arrived. 3 days later, the Indianapolis Star business section ran the headline: "Oaken Light CEO steps down amid financial turbulence." 6 months after founding Walsh Publishing Consortium, we moved into permanent offices inside a renovated warehouse in Fountain Square. 23 member publishers with a waiting list. We'd expanded beyond Indiana, partnering with small and mid-sized publishers across the Midwest. The industry had noticed. Publishers Weekly, New York Times Business. One called it the relationship revolution in publishing. I hadn't meant to spark a movement, just to preserve what worked. But sometimes the old ways become radical again when people remember why they mattered in the first place. Harold Blackwood called me on a quiet Tuesday morning. Oaken Light had a new CEO now, someone promoted from within, a decades-long veteran. "We'd like to discuss the possibility of Oaken Light joining your consortium," Harold said, straight to the point. I smiled. "That's not how it works, Harold. We don't bring in members your size." "Then perhaps a partnership arrangement?" "I'll bring it to our leadership council," I said, though I already knew how it would go. The publishers who joined us did, so to get away from the very structure Oaken Light still represented. After the call, I walked through our open office. No executive suite for me. Just a desk among the rest. I like being part of the conversation. Jacob looked up from his screen. "Everything all right?" "Just fine," I said. "Oaken Light wants to join the consortium." He laughed. Talk about full circle. That afternoon, I drove to Eagle Creek Park and sat beside the water, the same place I used to come when Oaken Light problems felt too heavy to carry. But now, there were no fires to put out, no damage control, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that what I built would outlast me. Not because it was flashy or disruptive, but because it was grounded in something real. People trusting people who'd earned it. Sometimes, getting fired is the best thing that can happen. Not because it leads to payback, but because it gives you the chance to build something more honest than what you left behind.